Welcome to the Long Take Review, where college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, Jen Bankard, and always two there are, no more, no less. First, he senses something, a presence he's not felt since... It's PT McNiff. How's it going, PT?
Everything's under control. Situation normal. We had a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
That's perfect. I was like, wait, is he picking this because of the how are you at the end? I'm doing great. I'm really excited about this episode. Maybe too excited to the point where the point of detriment. I'm not sure. We'll see. But we carry on.
One for us. One for us. That's what's important.
It's true. And he is the spark that will light the fire that will restore the Republic. It's Greg Cast. How's it going, Greg?
Look, your worshipfulness, let's get one thing straight. I take orders from just one person, me. I'm great, Jen. How are you doing?
I don't know how I feel about both of you choosing.
I mean, we're burning New Hope quotes considering we'll have an episode on it next year when the
oh, because it's an anniversary. Oops.
Yeah.
Oh, well. I didn't do that math in my
There's
head.
plenty. There's more where that came from,
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, either way, dear listeners, those were all references to what even occasional listeners likely know is our favorite film series, Star Wars. It's really hard, especially when Antonio's not here to keep us in check. Like, we just run amok. Star Wars references. After a 7-year break to focus on television shows, streaming series. I take issue with some of the language in this PT. I'm just kidding.
They don't count as TV because they're on streaming? What does that mean?
The Galaxy Far, Far Away is returning to theaters later this month with The Mandalorian and Grogu, which I want to remind everyone I drafted in our hype draft. I want credit for that if credit needs to be given later.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, of course. In case you're like panicking, wait, aren't you going to do an episode on The Mandalorian Grogu? Yes, we are. Of course, we're going to give that movie, because it's a new release, its own review, which will be, I think, a first ever on the show. I think since we started this podcast, no new Star Wars movie has been released in theaters. So we've done episodes on the anniversaries of the older films, but nothing brand new. So to get us ready, because we're so excited about this, we are gathering like Padawans to look back at the 12 films of scoundrels, sabers, and Skywalkers that have been theatrically released since the original movie debuted in 1977. To structure that discussion, we are going to come up with a collective consensus ranking, so we all have to agree. That's going to be interesting. From the original trilogy through the prequels, the sequels, and the stories. What movies will have our praises heaped upon them? Which ones were disappointments even to us hardcore fans? Presumably we like everything to a certain extent. And how upset will we get as we vehemently argue over the relative value of two movies that will end up somewhere in the middle of our list? Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future. So we will all find out together. Wow, this is way more fanfare than normal outlines get, PT. Just so
look at what we're doing.
I know, it's awesome. It's great. Today's conversation is going to be filled with spoilers from the start. So basically, we get to issue like a House of R style. If it's been in Star Wars canon, it could be spoiled. Anything and everything that's come out in theaters, especially with that Star Wars logo on it. So if you don't want the last 49 years of sci-fi, this sci-fi fantasy franchise spoil, I also maybe take issue with that language. But anyway,
you don't think it's sci-fi, it's space fantasy? We should say space fantasy. You like that better?
That would be more accurate. Anyway,
okay. All right.
Boy, we're not going to fight at all tonight. I can tell you.
It's too bad this wasn't in an editable doc that you could have looked at and made changes before we started recording.
That's fair.
I should have done. Maybe I shouldn't have sent you a PDF locked.
Well, I wanted to respect your prose, but also make fun of it. I guess that's.
I understand.
Okay.
You could type this shit, but you can't read it.
Oh no, this is not good. We're barely into this. Okay. I'm focusing. I'm resetting. Okay. So if you don't want the last 49 years of this franchise spoiled, then you have a dozen mostly good movies to watch on Disney Plus or physical media. Then you can rejoin us and listen to the rest of the conversation. PT, if listeners think we were on the verge of greatness, what can they do?
If you have a good feeling about this, then please follow the Long Take Review wherever you get your podcasts. We host the feed on Jen Substack at thelongtake.substack.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube, and many more. Wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you're listening right now, you can find us there. You can also follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. We are also on Letterboxd. You can follow the account at LTRpod, or you can search for the hashtag LTRpod to see what each of us individually has been watching.
Thanks, PT. So the goal for today is to come up with a group ranking, right? So we have to agree. This is one list. We're not sharing each of our lists. We are together building one unified list. So because, obviously each of us has our own opinions and different opinions about how we personally would rank these movies. Some of us even constantly think about and tweak our personal rankings because, well, that's just the kind of nerds that we are. The key will be figuring out when we can compromise and when we need to stick to our blasters to have our personal tastes represented in the group's final list. So yeah, we actually have, to be honest, listeners, we have no idea how contentious this is going to be or how long this is going to take. So buckle up. So I've talked long enough. PT wrote all this wonderful stuff for me to intro us with, but I want to throw it back to you two. Just talk a little bit about how do you feel about making this kind of list? Are you the one who's constantly changing their lists all the time? What was your approach to making your list in preparation for today? Give us a sense of where you're at with this enterprise.
So I would say this is something I think about a lot, and these are movies I watch a lot. And people who follow me on Letterboxd, what's that name again? That's right, Ion Canon, EYEONCANON. Know that I have made a habit the last few years. When we're hitting these anniversaries, I try to do a big kind of year-long project where Phantom Menace turned 25. I watched it 25 times that year. And Revenge of the Sith turned 20. I watched it 20 times. What? Also Force Awakens turned 10. I watched it 10 times that year, right? And this has really skewed a lot of my view counts of these movies. And I then feel bad just looking at my letterbox to see my most viewed movies of all time. And I'm like, I don't love Phantom Menace more than Last Jedi. How did this happen? And as if I need to fix that. And just by virtue of when Letterboxd came out, I think I caught Rise of Skywalker when I was a Letterboxd user, but not Last Jedi or any of the preceding films. So all my view counts are screwed up. So I tweak mine a lot. I think about it a lot. I think there's always a little bit of shuffling in the very kind of tip top, depending on my mood. But then the real part is just this big gooey middle. And that, again, was the part I struggled with. I thought I had mine set and then realized I'd completely forgotten one movie, very much like when I ranked last year and forgot Sinners. So I then had to rejigger everything and fit in one that is actually one of my favorites, and yet it ended up kind of in the gooey middle. So it's a little tricky. It's a little hard for me. I will just say that for this particular list, I was in the spirit of the upcoming 50th anniversary. I was thinking a lot about what it means for the franchise. So this is not necessarily just when I sit and think about what I want to watch or what I would say is a personal favorite or the best film necessarily. But I really thought through what to me is the most important thing about Star Wars and where do these films fit into that legacy. So I think I got a pretty good list, but I don't know. We'll fight it out. PT, you don't like Star Wars, right?
It's fine. It's not my thing. Here's what I will say. Similar to Greg, I think about this too often. This is like a resting heartbeat train of thought that happens in my mind. If I'm driving and I just have my mind will wander, it will occasionally wander to just what's my ranking? What's happening in that? And so, if I can't fall asleep at night because I'm worried about some sort of existential dread, I'll be let's go through the Star Wars movies. What's happening here to calm the nerves? So, it's just always something I'm thinking about and wondering. I'm not always thinking about it, but I'm frequently thinking about it. I'm never far from a time when I've considered how I feel about these and why I feel the way I do. And I have come down to like, ultimately, I don't think this is different necessarily than Greg, but I think I will phrase it slightly differently, which is just being like, this is just my ranking is my ranking. Like, this is just what matters to me and how I feel about it. And I'm not trying to get into like what's great and what is, whatever important in some broader thing or, get into, we talk a lot about qualities of film and we get really intellectual and academic about stuff. And I am a lot more just like, this is my heart and this is where I'm going with this when I'm thinking about this list. And that's not to say that I just don't like include some of the thoughts about those other things, but it's mostly there's a few instances along my list where there've been some flips here and there that's been pretty settled for a while now. But there's like, pairs of movies that kind of jostle with each other in my mind where I'm like, okay, it's definitely like this collection or whatever. But then in that middle that Greg's talking about, it's like, okay, like which one of these do I actually like a little bit more? And I ultimately just end with which one in my heart, to like almost like gut reaction, go with that. Somewhere in the torso, I respond, and that's where I go on this. And I'll say this now because I think this is a good sort of like master statement that will hang over a lot of my thoughts as we get into the discussion, and that is that there's Star Wars that has a lot of really interesting themes and ideas that is not necessarily they're not necessarily executed that well. And then there's Star Wars that's executed really well in like a visual and a performance level that doesn't have very successful themes and ideas. And the movies that are up at the top of my list are hanging like bring those two together. And I'm like, oh yeah, it has like good themes and it has good visual and filmmaking, and that all works really well. And a lot of sort of the back 2/3, back half maybe of the list is me trying to decide which I value more between the themes versus the visuals. So yeah, I'll be bringing that up a bunch as we start discussing things. So I'm laying that out now. Jen, what do you think about your list and how you build it and how you think about it? Are you normal? Do you not think about this all the time?
I mean, I think relative to both of you, with not with Star Wars in general, but with this list making, I think I am the most normal. And think about this the least, I would think.
I think you could just say across all categories, you're the most normal of the three of us. Stipulated.
I wasn't going to say it, but and I guess because I just love all Star Wars so much, and to go to kind of what PT was saying, it's like I am blinded by my heart with a lot of these movies, and so I do think that the concept of pitting them against each other is just something I, in my everyday life, try to avoid. But for the sake of this podcast, it seems like a great idea. Content over friendship. That includes my friendship with these movies, I guess. And I feel like I'm often torn, and not even with a ranked list, but just anytime people are like, what's your top 5 favorite movies of all time? What's your top 5? Like anytime I'm asked to produce a list of my favorites or something like that, I am often torn between, or I catch myself being torn between giving what I think is the correct answer and giving what my heart would say is the answer for me, if that makes sense. So like, I'm like, oh, well, this movie is like one of the best of all time and it's so intellectually it's so valuable, blah, blah, blah. But like really at the end of the day, what's going to make me the happiest? Like those oftentimes are two different things. And so I think I had to kind of like steer myself towards making more heart-based decisions than mind-based decisions in terms of like, and this came up when we did our best movies of the century, right? Where it was like, well, like what should I put my favorites on here, or should I put what I think is objectively or as close to objectively as possible the best, right? And so I think I went back and forth a lot when I was trying to make my list for this. But we'll see. I think some things on here, the placement will be completely irrational compared to what other people would say, because I was like, well, like this is an important one to me. And also we can't deny like the chronology of our lives as it is aligned with these movies, right? Like and Star Wars in particular as a franchise, I think has a generational factor where like if you're of a certain age, you're more likely to pick certain movies as your favorites, and have certain opinions on things. And so, I think that we just have to kind of acknowledge that as we go into this activity.
And it's interesting because I think generally we can say and have said we are like we are exennials. Like we were released original trilogy babies. We were all born when the original trilogy came out, but I was born at the start, right? Like a year after the original, and you guys were born when Return of the Jedi came out. So those 5 years might be really interesting this time. That could be impactful on what we, on how this goes.
I was just going to say, I'm reminded of when we ranked the Indiana Jones movies, and like we came down to it where it's like, no, Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best film, period, like capital F film. Whereas Jen and I believe, won over PT, who grumbled and only recently forgave us because we put Last Crusade at the top because that was where our hearts were on that one. And I think those are often people's 1 and 2 on those films, but it's like, for us, we let heart win there. But I also just want to open up the space to say that also means we're not here to yuck anybody's yum. We would love to hear if you hate our list and want to share your list. But obviously, whatever we're saying is not at all, trying to undercut the things people love. We love all these movies. Yes, even that one you're thinking nobody loves. We love that one. So people shouldn't be too grumbly with us because we do cry at night when we read the internet comments.
Wow.
And then we calm ourselves down by going back over our Star Wars list. Be like, okay, wait a minute.
Maybe I should start trying to do that. I've never used it as therapy, but maybe that's a good idea. I think movies as therapy.
If you think of the lists as being like you're pitting things you love against each other, that may not be soothing to you.
Yeah.
You might have to find some other version of it.
The other thing
the fun is in the discussion, right? And it is in the people disagreeing with us. So that's the point. And that's what Star Wars nerds really love. Like if people haven't had the pleasure of going to like a Star Wars celebration, when you get off the internet, people are really nice in general, and you can have a great debate and discussion where you're not accidentally calling each other Nazis or some such. So, but Jen, I've cut you off twice now. So go ahead and talk, and I'll cut you off a third time when you begin.
What else? Yeah, to emphasize Greg's point, this is not what I was going to say, but I'm thinking of it now. To emphasize Greg's point, just because we don't end up putting your favorite Star Wars movie at the top of our list doesn't mean that we dislike everything about you and who you are. Right? Those are two different things. We're able to separate those things. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to say is that in terms of process, what I did was I kind of tried to very quickly and instinctively come up with my list without looking at anything else. You know what I mean? And then I actually went to a letterbox list that I had made many years ago. I should have looked to see how many years ago, but it was like several years ago. And my top 5 or 6 were exactly the same. And then the rest of them, like there were huge chunks that were kind of clustered together, like 2 or 3 movies that stayed together, but like certain clusters rose and others fell.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. And I was like, I wonder how much of that has to do with like how often I've rewatched some of these, like some of these being in theaters again, not to spoil probably what's to come, but
I am curious to see, because I have a similar experience with like I've got movies that are clustered, and they're in my mind they're frequently paired. Although I guess maybe there's one cluster that maybe is 3 movies, but where they kind of jostle with each other. But then in theory, the clusters could flip, or the pairs could flip in the overall ranking. I'm very curious if we have similar pairs, similar clusters,
right,
or if
just
we
in different spots
totally differently. I guess.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
The only other thing I was going to say was apologies to fans of the holiday special and the Ewok movies, but we didn't include television films. We're only doing theatrically released movies, and that's to celebrate Mandalorian and Grogu and Star Wars returning to the cinemas. And also, I don't know how much discussion we really want to have about the 2 Ewok movies or the holiday special. That's not concluded here. Apologies if you are really looking forward to that. And we're also not including the TV series, because then we're suddenly getting into a whole other metrics, and that's difficult to include. So it's just the theatrically released movies.
And I just want to buttress that by if people are trying to figure out the number 12, what you're forgetting is the 2008 Clone Wars animated feature film that was released as a film despite being essentially a television pilot. So you get the 9 Skywalkers, Solo, Rogue One, and Clone Wars, just so we get it on the table before we start going.
Well said.
Smart.
PT, do you want to say just a little bit about kind of our procedure here, like how the system you've set up for us to kind of figure this out?
Yeah. So at least to begin, we'll see how it unfolds when the discussion happens. But we're going to go with there's a randomized order, and somebody will we'll start at the bottom and move up. So we can discuss the movies that maybe we didn't feel as positively about, or at least are not ranked as high as the others. And build up to our favorites up at the top in the up to number 1. And so one person will propose a movie to go into that slot and give sort of, talk about it a little bit. And that will open the discussion. We will see if the other 2 people are like, that's the same one I would put in there, or you persuaded me, that's fine. Or say, no, I have a counter offer. And then we'll sort of discuss what we think and try to come to a consensus. That's the thing. We don't know how like contentious or drawn out that could be. So and then we'll move on, to the next slot. And maybe what will end up happening is we'll get to a pair of movies, and it will be like, which one goes, at 9 and which one goes at 8. And then we go back and forth. And the person who is at 8 is basically like, yeah, that one we just talked about for 15 minutes. That other one is the next one. So, some of these slots might take a little while. Some of them might take no time at all. We'll see how it goes.
Excellent. So Greg, I believe, has the first offer for our 12th movie.
And I just like zoned out and started ranking in my head. So PT did emphasize that we are starting at the bottom.
Correct.
Yes.
All right. But now we're here. Okay. I have a couple big swings in my list. I will say I don't believe this first one is a big swing that will be controversial at all. So when I thought about Star Wars and mixed together some version of my personal favorites as well as what I thought was really an important moment in the franchise and had a positive legacy, the one that landed at number 12, which I'm so sorry because I love so many of the characters in this one a lot, is The Rise of Skywalker. To me, there are some redeeming qualities of this film. I'm not saying it's completely irredeemable, but to me, this is the one that feels the most bankrupt in terms of its creative decisions. And I would point, it is now established fact that they did not figure out who Rey was until after principal photography was done, and they had Adam Driver in a New York City hotel room recording ADR lines in a closet to figure out how to explain it to the audience. I think if people just listen to the big ringer Star Wars draft, they really made a lot out of the death of Chewbacca and how he doesn't die, but like they wanted you to feel it for all of 2 minutes. And it just felt to me, I actually don't even mind the Palpatine coming back of it all. That's not what I bump on, but so much of it feels messy. I think the Rey Palpatine doesn't really work for me. I do appreciate the idea that she gets to choose her identity at the end. And I really admire the fans who really love that is a great message, but everything else in this is really sloppy. I think it's clear with the unfortunate passing of Carrie Fisher, they should have just given an extra year to the timetable. I think this got rushed. I think everybody involved did the best they could, but it didn't come together. So I offer Rise of Skywalker as my 12 of 12.
I don't think you're getting any arguments.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any other option. Here's what I will say. Both of you said very nice things about like how we all love Star Wars movies and we love all the people who love all the Star Wars movies. And if we don't say nice things about your movie, it's not because we don't care about it and we don't care about you. And I think that's true. I've only left the theater after seeing a Star Wars movie disappointed twice. And only one of those times did I leave saying that was bad. And it was The Rise of Skywalker. Where I was like we'll get to the one where I was disappointed and whatever. But I was like, oh no, that's bad. Like it's not good. And I think Greg, you got to the point. You got to what the deal was, which was like they needed more time. It was already a rush schedule to get these instead of 3 years between each movie that happened in the original movies and in the prequels. They wanted to do them faster. It really feels a lot like content generation at that point of just like, we got to fill the schedule and that we can build this up. This can be another Marvel for us. Da 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 da. And that was worrisome. But then the movie started coming out, and they were, I mean, we'll get into how exactly we feel, but like pretty good. We were having a good time. Some of them very good. And it was like, oh, okay, okay. And this, like the movie we ended up getting for episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, is what, at least personally, I had been worried about when they were like, it's not going to be this guy anymore. It's not the guy who does it. It's not George Lucas. He's retiring. He's passing it on. It's going to be a committee room of people, executives and creatives, who are going to make this decision, and they're going to work on it. I had been worried, and I don't think I was alone, that it was going to be them being like, people on the internet seem to like this, and they seem to like this, and they also like this. Let's just make a movie that does all of that. And they had successfully, it seemed, avoided that for at least three to four movies. But for reasons that I'm sure people who have listened this far into the episode are aware of, there was backlash to episode 8. There was uncertainty around the director. There's a lot of people out there who get into like, there was no plan for the sequels, and that's why it fell apart. I always contend the problem is there was a plan, but they had to / did abandon it, and they abandoned it for two reasons. One, they didn't think the director that they had chosen, Colin Trevorrow, could do the job of episode 9, and Colin Trevorrow's ideas, which you can read because his draft for episode 9 is out there, very much hinged upon Princess Leia being an active figure with new lines and doing things that like could not be done without Carrie Fisher, who had sadly and unfortunately passed away. And so they didn't really figure out how to adjust to that, I think, in a way that worked. And they brought back JJ because JJ had landed The Force Awakens and had worked under duress and had kind of made things happen on the fly for that movie. And it seemed like they thought, we can do this like again, and it'll work out great. And it will still come out before Bob Iger retires. And it will still be something that we can get to by the end of 2019. And it's going to be very successful. And it's unfortunately not very good. I think there's like, my contention is there's 3 moments that work in isolation in this movie, and one scene that from beginning to end is successful, and everything else is to some degree flawed. And that's unfortunate. So that's as negative as I'm going to get about anything in this, unless we start digging into the special editions. Jen?
The only other thing I'll add is that I think this one, beyond all the reasons both of you just said, gets this last spot because it effectively killed the sequel trilogy. Yeah. Like, people were on board, and we're on board with this trilogy, especially after Force Awakens. People were like, yeah, we're back. And then Last Jedi was polarizing, but didn't like kill how people thought of the trilogy as it was unfolding. And then now, because of Rise of Skywalker, people look back on the sequel trilogy and they're like, well, that was all a mistake, right? And kind of like use that one movie overshadows so much of what was good about the first 2, to the point where people are just like, bah, like I ranked that whole trilogy really low. And like, do I think that's deserved for the other 2 movies? No, we'll get into it obviously, but I do think that it's so powerfully distasteful to so many Star Wars fans that it really just like totally changed the way people thought about this group of movies.
Yeah. And I want to reiterate something Greg said, because I was being like, I have a lot of negativity towards this, but the cast is great. The action is really good. Like, this is what I think about what I was, said sort of up top when we were thinking about our list about like, there's sort of like the surface level enjoyment of these movies. And there's like, this is thematically like empty. It's like a void of like, they didn't really figure out ideas so much as like just sort of moves they could try to make. And they didn't really like, it'll make sense when we put it all together. But there is a lot of good action. I feel like, it will be very curious as someone who was an adult, or at least like in college when the prequels started coming out, and lived through the backlash of the prequels and people hating them. And then the prequel generation grew up, and now everyone is like, the prequels, everyone really always loved them. And they've always been really accepted. I will be very curious to see if that reclamation also happens with this, and if there is a Rise of Skywalker embracing about like, oh, we all knew that it was Rey Palpatine the whole time, like it was just Mr. X along the way, or if it ends up like Jen, you were saying, because it made such a sort of hash out of like how the first two interact with each other and what it leads to, that it just kind of stays where it is as this kind of, it didn't come together, so therefore it doesn't really hold up. I don't quite know, but there might be salvation for this movie down the line. It won't come from me, but it may come from the fandom and people who are going to grow up with it.
Somehow people liked The Rise of Skywalker again. That's
Well,
Yes.
I think PT said it right, because to me, a good Star Wars movie, the harder you look at it, the more interesting and deep it is. And this one, you start looking beyond the surface level of those cool visuals, and you're like, so these people were on Star Destroyers under the ice for like 30 years, and then they slowly pulled up into the atmosphere over the course of like a week and a half, and then crashed and died. That's it. Like none of it really kind of all fits together, and it's a shame. I will just shout out my friend who I think puts this in like his top 3. The secret to his love of this movie is he didn't watch the teaser trailer. So that sequence where Kylo comes storming across the desert at Rey is like amazing. And we all saw it as a teaser trailer in, I don't even remember where, Chicago, I think. And it was like, wow, like this is incredible. This movie's going to rule. And the movie let us all down, whereas he went and he was like, whoa, did you see that scene in the middle? And it's like, yeah, dude, we saw that last year. Like, what are you talking about? So that's my friend Tyler, co-host of Through the Glass Columns, my Wheel of Time show, who somehow he'll never listen to this, but he will somehow know that I have invoked his love of Rise of Skywalker, which I think would make him happy.
All right, PT, what's your number 11?
Okay. First, I do want to just note, it's the Han Solo Kylo Ren scene is the one scene I think works. Like that works from beginning to end. It's excellent. It's the one time the movie slows down. It's unfortunate that it happens because that is the thing they have to include because Carrie Fisher can't be there, but Harrison Ford showed up. Adam Driver showed up. That scene's great. Okay. My number 11 is one that I don't think you guys will agree with, and that's fine. And I'm not going to be like attached to it as it has to come here. I'm willing to move on this, but I need to be true to myself because, as I said, there are only 2 times I was ever disappointed leaving a theater, and the other time was 2008's The Clone Wars, the animated movie, because I went to see that and I was like so pumped there was going to be a Clone Wars TV show. I thought this was going to be great, and I didn't think it was very good. And I was like, oh, this doesn't look great. And it also is kind of weird and sluggish and slow. And I don't like that Anakin has an apprentice. That doesn't make any sense. And of course, over time, the animation has only improved. And you grew used to it, and then B, it improved. Ahsoka has become such a core central character. Looking back at the movie, you can be like, oh yeah, like it was not as bad as I felt it was at the time. But it's also not a very good collection of Clone Wars episodes. Like if we were going to make a ranking if we divided this movie up into 4 episodes and I made a ranking of all the Clone Wars episodes, this is in the bottom 10%. I think each of these, maybe the first introduction of Ahsoka would be a little bit higher, but yeah, I don't think it's not that good. And so, there's some other movies that I think have some more maybe core central flaws to them. And I'm, again, willing and open to discuss with both of you. If you guys are both like, no, there's another movie we should definitely rank lower than this. But to me, this kind of felt like the most like bland experience of Star Wars in a theater that I kind of left with like, okay, I guess. Like I didn't hate it. I wasn't like mad. I didn't think it was bad, but I kind of just thought it was whatever. So that's what I'm going to put out as my first offer.
I'm deeply offended by this.
I'm sorry, Jen.
It's okay.
Jen's face went through a series of contortions while I was talking. So
in a format that early Clone Wars animation could not have handled. But yes.
No, sure. That's correct. It did not have the polygons.
So I cannot be objective with this because I love it. To me, it's impossible to separate the whole series, The Clone Wars, from this movie.
Fair.
And my my favorite Star Wars character is Ahsoka, and this is her debut as a character. So I am kind of politely requesting we at least bump this up a little bit. I do understand why you would want this to be towards the bottom of the list, because I think as a movie, it's hard to stack it up against, especially plot wise or whatever, with some of these other movies on here. But I think I always try to grade a paper based on what it's trying to be, and so I think once you do that, maybe that warrants being a little kinder to this movie. But here's the thing: so when I recently rewatched this, because it had been a long time, I had rewatched it since Greg and I actually went to go see this with our friend Tim. Shout out to Tim, who probably
Hey,
doesn't listen
Tim.
to this show. We went to go see this in the theater. I do remember getting a poster that I do not have anymore, and that makes me sad. But but I so much of the discourse about Ahsoka being annoying when she's introduced in this movie has just been so pervasive that I was like, well, I gotta rewatch this like more recently just to do a check, a gut check on it, right? To be like, is it true? And I have to say, like, she's very young, but I think a lot of the reaction to her as an annoying teenager is two things. One is mostly because of the way that Anakin and Obi-Wan are reacting to her, where everyone's just continually calling her a youngling, and then they're like, this kid. And I'm like, okay, but if you actually look at what she's saying most of the time, she's just being an assertive girl, and like, can we just let her be? Like, she's a little precocious, she's a little arrogant, but so is Anakin. Like, so let's all just chill out a little bit. Anyway, so I will step down from my soapbox there. So she's not as annoying as the discourse whipped up for her to be.
I think that's fair. I will note I was annoyed at the concept of her more than the execution. And again, I've of course changed my mind on that. I will also say, to speak to the experience, that maybe the context and saying I follow my heart and how I feel about it, and perhaps the context around the experience is something that is going to be an issue for this one. I moved from Boston to Los Angeles by driving across country. Planned it out pretty good. Like long driving days, short driving days, visiting friends along the way. I arrived in Los Angeles, drove up to my friend's house at like 1:00 in the afternoon, and we went to a 6:00 showing of Clone Wars that night.
Whoa.
So I may have also been out of my mind from having just driven across the country. And the seat in the theater, it was at the ArcLight, my first time ever going to the ArcLight. The seat in the theater felt a lot like the seat in my Subaru, and I did note that before the movie began, where I was like, I basically feel like I'm back in my car after having just been in it for 5 days. So maybe that affected it. I don't know. So, again, I'm more than willing to listen to a counter offer. I just needed to speak my truth.
And no disrespect, speaking your truth. So actually very similar, not at all to driving across country. But I remember we were coming out of the prequel age, and yeah, it was 3 years later, but I was like, let's go. We're so back. Let's do this. And I remember I did the midnight showing with our friend Tim. Jen, you weren't at the midnight showing. I think we saw it a little while after that. And we got there at like 10:30, and because this was still no reserved seats, you just had to go. And it was like, no, Jem, we did go see it a week later. Like, I just don't remember you being there at midnight. I'm not denying your experience. We saw it, and we saw it with all your roommates, who I remember being not into it because they were super cool, just a little more bro-y type of nerds, and they were not into it. Nice guys, of course, because they all listen, I'm sure. But I remember we got there early, and there was like no one in line, and then like there was an Obi-Wan and a Shaak Ti who came in full costume, and Shaak Ti, that's a lot of makeup, and they like looked around realizing that like, oh, like this isn't gonna be like those other times. And so the midnight screening, and this was a true midnight screening, was like half full at our theater, and we all just knew, that being said, I really like this movie. I will admit I did not rewatch this within the last probably 2 to 3 years. But my memories of it are pretty good, and it was one on my list that got buoyed up by its legacy. I think we would have had the shows no matter what. This was an afterthought of a release, but Star Wars animation is such a key and vibrant part of this that it's hard not to celebrate this little. I still remember the walker stepping up and starting to climb up the cliff, and that was like a nice new action set piece, something that probably they could have managed in live action in the prequels, but like felt totally new and different. I think there are, to agree with PT, there are then, that's like, I think the second of the 4 episodes. So you have Christophsis, then the Cliffs of Teth, just showing my Ion Cannon skills.
Wow, it's great.
Yeah.
You
The
nerd.
Cliffs of Teth. And then you have Coruscant with Jabba the Hutt's Truman Capote-esque cousin.
Zero
uncle?
the Hut.
Well, Senator. And then we have the conclusion on Tatooine, which kind of breaks canon because well, it doesn't really, but Dooku and Anakin fight after it was just, now he's referring to that, and then like 10 more fights. So I think the problem is those last 2 episodes are the weaker of them all. So whatever high energy you got through lost its luster by the time you got there. So I'm interested to see if this gets reowned. Honestly, the people I know who love the Clone Wars TV show, they often don't stand up for the movie, for better or worse. They kind of leave that behind. But I did not have it this low, so you're not going to like what I say is mine. But I'm happy to wheel and deal a little on this one. I think I probably have it too high, but I'd be interested to hear counter offers on this.
First, just because I don't know if we're going to come back to it again, I will say that Stinky, aka Rhoda the Hutt, Jabba the Hutt's son, is prominently featured in the promotional materials for the Mandalorian and Grogu. So if you don't like this movie, you may still want to rewatch it.
refresh that memory, because that's and again, I guess maybe I'm weighing a lot of like first viewing when I think about my heart, because you watch it again and it's just sort of like lesser Clone Wars episodes, and those are generally still pretty good. And I love the Clone Wars, but if we could have had the Siege of Mandalore, if that was released theatrically before it went on Disney Plus, that would be very high up on my list. So it's not a knock on the animation, of course. And I love Zero the Hutt. That's what I wanted to add. That was one thing where I was like, that's so weird. That's awesome. I like that. So people were like very upset. People were mad at Rada, like fart jokes. They were like, haven't we moved past this? And now we've got this like kid, blah, 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 blah. And then there's the New Orleans Cajun hut. Like, what's happening? And I'm like, no, the hut's good.
More huts. All right. Give us more huts. That's all.
Who should be here? What should be here at 11? Someone give me a counter offer so this doesn't like just get stuck here. I'm happy to have it move up.
I had Solo, A Star Wars Story in the spot. Is that what
That's
you
what I had too. That's my arms are in the air. I didn't think anybody would like that pick, but yeah.
So as I said, this whole activity was very stressful, and I didn't enjoy it. Sorry, but
she says at the end of hour 1 of 6.
Right. But I ultimately put this movie here because it commits crimes that echo throughout movie history now in terms of the prequelness. And I don't mean that not to be confused with the prequel trilogy, but the idea of like the origin story prequel movie really demonstratively pointing to, in a very crass way, things that we already know or we don't know about a particular iconic character, right? And so there are things in this movie that I like. Donald Glover as Lando, A+, right? And there's certain moments in this movie that just have good vibes and are fun. Alden Ehrenreich is not the reason this movie is this low on my list. It is mostly the screenplay and the moments, the cringy moments that are like, hey, guess what? We're making a movie about Han Solo. Don't you like Han Solo?
Go ahead, Greg. You also had this low.
So this is where I put Solo. Everything good about Solo is summed up in the words Donald Glover, as Jen just demonstrated out loud. No, my real, and this actually is a little bit in line with PT. My problems with Solo are also very much rooted in it coming after The Last Jedi and in the heat of The Last Jedi discourse, which The Last Jedi was like challenging a lot of traditional tropes. And I think really look at like how Poe is represented in Last Jedi, and then there were lots of internet fanboy tears about it. And I don't think it's that Solo was a reaction to it, but into that space came like, hey, I know you white boys are hurting. What if there was a white boy so charming that the whole galaxy reacted to him and he got whatever he wanted? And I really hated Solo. And I wrote a blog entry about it that I think made a friend never want to talk to me again. But I just really found this really problematic. And I don't like every time the creators talked about it, they were like, well, and then Kira gave up her whole life to save Han Solo. I'm like, what? And like all this stuff like made it worse and worse that everybody reacted to that. And it's like, we had to make Lando into a cheater so that Han could get with the Falcon. And like, look, it's the prequel thing. We know Han ends up with the Falcon, but it's like, let's just make sure the white guy gets what he wants, right? And again, in that problematic way. So I like the performances. You know, there are a couple kind of fun moments, but I really don't like the script. And I mean, go no further than oh, you don't have any people? We'll call you Han Solo. Like, come on. Like, I'm out of here. No, thank you. PT, I've tried really hard. You offered a take on our text thread, and I tried really hard not to step on it, but I think I did. But your take is correct, and I agree with it. But go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh man, what did I say on the text thread versus what I
just
said
that it's the script. It's nothing.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Okay, that's the script. I agree. Yeah, I think. Well, first of all, I want to say I'm very glad both of you have come to realize it's not great when someone takes a beloved Harrison Ford character and then has a movie sequence that's all about here's all the ways in which everything you know about him came together in a short period of time, which is why you agree Raiders of the Lost Ark is better than The Last Crusade and The River Phoenix.
Fair.
But yeah, here's my diagnosis of Solo, and that is I'm not against having it be this low. I did not have it this low, but I'm not against it for reasons that you said. I think the problem is the problem in the making of it was they had this idea. They had a few ideas kicking around for these non-trilogy movies, these non sort of Skywalker saga things they're going to start bringing in. They dubbed a Star Wars story, and Lawrence Kasdan was there. Like I think it was the story I had always heard was Kathleen Kennedy just had her door open for a while, right when the purchase happened, being like pitch things to me, talking to people in Hollywood and people in Lucasfilm. And Lawrence Kasdan came in being like, I co-wrote Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And he was working on, I think at that point already, The Force Awakens, or at least he eventually did. And his thing was he knows Han Solo. He wanted to tell the story of Han Solo. And he brought in one of his sons. He has two sons, I believe, who are screenwriters and filmmakers. He brought in Jonathan Kasdan. I don't remember what Jonathan Kasdan has worked on besides this, but I know he's got some stuff. And they worked on it. And then, of course, there was the whole Lord and Miller thing where they brought in Phil Lord and Christopher Miller to direct it. And that got like kerfuffly because there was this tension about like they're making a comedy and they're improvising, but they need to actually stick to the script. And that was causing problems between them, blah, blah, blah. And they ended up choosing Lawrence Kasdan and then getting Ron Howard in, and they had to reshoot a bunch of stuff. And the budget for Solo blossomed and became this huge thing. And through all of that, no one was like, are we sure the script doesn't need a few more passes?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we sure? Because there was all this other tension, it feels like, and because there was sort of some deference to Kasdan as the Solo guy. And yeah, that's the core issue with it. I think if this movie were young Lando Calrissian and a bunch of guys and gals who are off on a mission or a series of missions, I think we'd have a great time with this movie. You just take out all those things of like, here's where Han Solo got his blaster. Here's why he wears a vest. Here's why he's got his last name. Here's why he has a Millennium Falcon. Like, I just watched this last night.
That one just hit me really hard. I don't know why.
Yeah, it did. But again, we need to start doing videos so people could see the winces when some things are brought up. But all that's, but the only thing I'll say is, this is in trying to work the the needle between like, this is another movie where it's like, this doesn't really have a lot to say, but it's a fun Star Wars adventure, versus say some movies that I think we'll be talking about relatively soon that come from George Lucas himself and have a lot of thematic resonance and have a lot of things there, but the execution of it is, oh boy, there's some issues here. I, as of this most recent watching and as of sort of in recent years, have been sort of slotting Solo above that because I'm like, it's dumb in a lot of ways, but there's stuff that's really fun. That said, for our collective list, I have no problem with it coming in at 11. So I say we go with that.
So I would propose then that if you give us Solo at 11, I am satisfied giving you Clone Wars at 10, which is still lower than I had it. So it is.
Sure.
It doesn't sound like a sacrifice, but it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's much lower than I had it. So
wow.
Well, in that case, okay, no. In that case,
but I get it. I did that to be like, I guess it got to be me. Even though this is probably incorrect.
But that's well, here's what I say. I say we will put in Solo, a Star Wars story in at 11, and then I would like in a moment to hear Jen's pitch for what she thinks should be a 10, and then we could discuss if it will actually be something else, which could be the Clone Wars. The last thing I do want to say about Solo, only because I just watched it, and I literally have no idea when this will ever come up again on our podcast, because why are we going to get into Solo at any point in the future? But my pitch for fixing Solo as it currently exists is to take out everything that happens in the Maelstrom after they leave Kessel. So, and this is relying very much on you remembering beat by beat, almost second by second, the details of this movie, which both of you rank as the second worst Star Wars movie. But there's a whole sequence on Kessel. There's the robot revolution. They get the coaxium. There's fighting, the shooting, blah, 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 all that's happening. They get on the ship. L3 blown up. Lando sad. Han Solo flying the ship for the first time. The ship being the Millennium Falcon. They're leaving, and there's a Star Destroyer there that's blocking the way, and a bunch of TIE fighters come out, and they're like, what are we gonna do? And Han Solo goes, we'll just like jump through all the stuff you're not supposed to go through. And they're like, well, we can't really do that, blah, blah, blah. Then he's like, that's all right, we're gonna do that. He says, I have a good feeling about this, which is the inverse of what's normally said. And then he flies into the clouds, and there's a great playing, fighting sequence, and they do all the music cues from the old movie, and stuff happens. There's a huge beast. They have to jump out, and all that's fine, but it's too much. And I think it would be funny if the relatively pristine Millennium Falcon flies into the clouds, and then it just cuts to the planet where they're going to bring it, and you just hear them being like, we're coming in fast, and then they come in with this destroyed ship, and they land, and Han Solo leaves the ship saying, just made the Kessel run in 12 parsecs, and you don't know what happened, and you don't know what it means, and it takes out this like sequence of like 20 minutes where it's just almost nonstop action, followed by 20 minutes of almost nonstop talking, and I think it like gets to the talking a little bit faster, and I think it like would improve the pace, and it brings the movie down to just over 2 hours. And I think that helps and doesn't make it feel as much like it maybe should have been 5 episodes of a TV series that came later instead of, instead of this movie, which kind of feels a little overstuffed.
That sounds like it would have been in the Lord and Miller version where you're describing.
Yes, that does sound like humor. Yeah. Well, and Jen, you implied this, but I want to say it outright. I think Project Hail Mary demonstrates you just trust Lord and Miller. Spider-Verse demonstrates like they're good producers. They know what they're doing in terms of directing and story. I will, yes, and with my classic fix for Solo has always been swap the actors who play the two mentors. So Woody Harrelson dies and Thandui Newton survives. And it is way more interesting to have her kind of blaxploitation-esque kind of hustler mentor Han Solo than it is to have, a guy who's just like Han Solo. And, right. It's just way more interesting to me as a character choice.
One last thing I'll say is we don't need the backstory of Han Solo. Like Han Solo's arc is perfect in A New Hope. There's nothing you can do before that movie to add to what's already there. So that's a core problem, even though I remember the EU books.
Just have him do the arc once beforehand. So you know that it's going to happen because he's already done that once. Yes,
but he's going to say that's not who he is. He's going to be saying like, no, I'm really a scoundrel multiple times. So it'll work out great. That said, I did, the first thing I said after watching that movie was, I wonder if Alden Ehrenreich could come back and be Han Solo again in something else. And then ended up realizing that he's now older than Harrison Ford was in A New Hope, which made me very sad and very old. Jen. Anything else to add on this, or do you want to move to your proposal for
Just
number
that
2?
I want to give a shout out that despite where we're putting this movie, I have a very fond memory of us the theatrical experience going to see it because it was with you
Mm-hmm.
and our two friends who are both named Jim. And our reaction was pretty different than the conversation we just had, where we came out of the theater being like, that was not as bad as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of our the
Yes.
tone of our conversation.
With the peak of it being the two Jims being like, who is that guy at the end who looks like Darth Maul? And we were like, Darth Maul.
That's
And they were
Darth
like,
Maul.
but he died. And we were like, oh no. Oh boy.
The number of conversations I had about how this then took place before Phantom Menace. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like, you know.
I also think like separate from the Han Solo issue, and maybe this is unfair that I said it would be good if this was a Lando movie, but I do feel like it was a mistake to have one of the first two Star Wars story movies be a young version of a main character, when the idea, like the thing that felt possible, that both Rogue One, which came out before it, and then with the first live action TV show, The Mandalorian, that came out afterwards, did sort of show was like people were really interested in some random corner of Star Wars and not necessarily more of these people we already knew, especially when it was, again, I think Alden does a good job in this movie. And I think that time has been very kind to his performance and the choices he was making as an actor. But I do think it's still ultimately just like, why am I going to watch Han Solo and it's not Harrison Ford? Like, what am I doing? Like, I could watch four movies plus a scene of Harrison Ford doing this. Why would I watch this? Even though it's a good rewatch, it's a fun movie if you want Star Wars and you're burnt out on good Star Wars, which maybe is a nice way of saying it fits in at number 11 quite well.
Yeah. All right. Well, keeping with that spirit, I'm going to share my number 10. It is Attack of the Clones. And I think what our conversation is making me realize that a big factor in my rubric was how high are your movie crimes? And
how high are you when you watch this?
I wish I could just wish myself to be higher when watching this movie.
But so for me, there's this was a tough one to rank because there are a lot of things in it I really love. I love the Detective Kenobi storyline. I love the diner. I love, there's so much stuff in this, and I actually am fine with the Jango Fett. The Jango Fett Boba Fett stuff I actually enjoy when I watch this. But for me, again, how high are your crimes and misdemeanors? Any scene that has Anakin and Padme just tanks this movie for me a lot of the time when I watch it. I'm just like, oh, it's just, and that's partly the writing and partly the direction. There's something weird happening in the way that they're talking to each other that is just not normal. and just it's tough. It's tough. And we frequently cut back to those scenes. So maybe half of this movie I really like and half of this movie seems like movie crimes.
I would push it to, it's a third of this movie that's bad, because like there's the opening and then there's the end sequence, which is a lot of it is not the two of them. Sure. And then it's alternating in the middle. So I think, I don't know. Craig, what do you think about this?
I would just throw in, this is one that feels the most changed to me over time, because when this came out, this was like, finally, they figured it out. We got a good one now. And I think that was essentially the consensus. And I remember the moment when it was an episode of 30 Rock. I think they're reflecting on what happened in 2002. And Liz Lemon is like, yeah, Attack of the Clones came out, and that was the worst of the Star Wars movies. And I was like, oh my God, I think Liz Lemon's right. Like culturally I'd been left behind and I still loved it. And actually, Jen, you mentioned our friend Tim. This was always Tim's take in Star Wars ranking, was that Attack of the Clones was way worse than Phantom Menace. And you just wait until like culture catches up with this take. And I think he's been vindicated. And again, I don't think he listens to this, but you were vindicated, buddy. I really love some of the sequences. Yoda's lightsaber was so important at the time, and yet now it's like, yeah, that's just a thing he does, which it's hard to recapture the magic of that. absolutely agree that everything with Anakin and Padme. I would also throw in, we don't often complain about this, but this is where the CG looks the worst. Although PT will bracket off 1997 Jabba as just like a whole different category of crime.
Thank you, Greg.
Uh, yeah, that this has aged very poorly. So when I rewatch this one, I think it looks the worst of them, and it's because the Lucas spirit of pushing forward was great, but here it has, for some reason, it falls more in the uncanny valley than the episode 1 stuff does to me. So there's a lot of potential here. Ewan McGregor, always a good time. Never gonna turn down some Ewan McGregor. I think I'm staring at a picture of Jen and I with Ewan McGregor right now instead of looking at the screen with you two together. Sorry, PT. You're just no Ewan McGregor.
Totally fair. Strong endorse that choice.
And so it does pain me a little bit, but it's absolutely a script problem. Like the dialogue is so terrible. Although, how many times do I turn to my wife and say, completely ironically, "Homie," like you do by that lake on Naboo, and so on. So there is something iconic about how bad it is. But remember when he rides the shock? And he's like surfing on. Oh God,
the potato shot. Now, Greg, remember when that's a line from Revenge of the Sith and not from Attack of the Clones? It's just referencing something from Attack of the Clones.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So when you reference that line, you're referencing a better movie, as evidenced by the construction of this. Yeah, of course. I always say we live in a real world. Like, wake up or rejoin it. I forget what it is, but it's very funny because they live in multiple worlds because they travel from planet to planet. But anyway, yeah, this movie, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, I will say I also had it at number 10 because I had it above the Clone Wars, but I had it below Solo, a Star Wars story, because this is where it starts to get a little weird, where I'm like, there's so much happening here. Lucas had his plans, and Lucas had the prequels have such good themes running underneath it. And it's so interesting. And there's so many core flaws in the execution of them. And I say that as a prequel defender, like a diehard who got crap for many decades after those movies came out, and I still do from some of my friends, for being too positive about the prequels. It's just weird now in the world of Star Wars discourse that the mood on the prequels has shifted so far that I feel like noting the flaws is making me sound like a prequel hater, because people are like just generally default to being like, these movies are great. Actually, they may even be better than the originals. And it's like, please don't. Please stand down, because there are real flaws here. I do want to note, in contrast to my number 11, and also to say that when I was talking about pairs of movies that jostle, for the longest time, it was only the Phantom Menace re-release, going and seeing it in theaters, that moved Phantom Menace finally above this movie for the first time, I think, in my life. And I think that is because, unlike the Clone Wars, where I had a very negative experience, I had a very positive experience seeing this movie. And I don't know if I've ever told either of you this. Maybe I have. I saw this movie before it came out. I saw it like 5 or 6 days before my tickets that I already had purchased for a midnight showing, because I got to go to a charity screening through the nonprofit that I worked for in New York. And I saw it with a bunch of kids who were brought in. I think this is terrible, but it's true. A bunch of kids who were like somehow related to the victims of 9/11, or at least people who had been like first responders at 9/11. And they invited them and then a bunch of people from area nonprofits around downtown New York, which the nonprofit I worked for was one of them, to go and see this movie. Natalie Portman was there. John Williams was there. For some reason, Dennis Leary was there. He left. Natalie Portman left because she had finals, which might be a nice way of saying she did not want to watch herself in those scenes. But there was also a bunch of people from Lucasfilm who were there who I did not recognize, who I bet if I could travel back in time now, I would know because of social media. The room was very in favor of the movie. It's on principle. It had a lot of children in it. They were down with it. Everything that we now would watch and be like, that was bad, everyone just sort of quietly sat through. Whereas that midnight showing I went to with a regular audience, like, was jeering and booing during those scenes. And when Jar Jar showed up, people were like, oh my God. Like, there was vocal negative reactions to the negative things in the movie. But then when things that were good in the movie happened, like things that worked well, people lost it. And I, at least personally, at that point, had not seen any indication about the sequence was going to happen that Yoda was going to fight Dooku. When that sound started of his cane coming down the hallway it's maybe the most like buzz I've ever felt in a movie theater that was sustained through that entire sequence. And people were just cheering the entire time his lightsaber was activated. People were out of their minds. And I left that movie walking on air being like, that was so great. And everyone who I had gone to see it with from the nonprofit was like, no, it wasn't. But good for you. We're glad that you liked it. We're like, well, yeah, whatever. I'm glad you had a good time. So I had a really positive first experience of it that lets me sort of overlook a lot of it. I also do think the Detective Obi-Wan Kenobi sequence of that sort of noir storyline works really well, and people undervalued it for a long time. So I was always like, actually, Attack of the Clones is better than The Phantom Menace. I don't know if that's true anymore. But to bring it back to our actual discussion, I would say, like, are we sure we would want to say that this movie, with its crimes, but with the things it is trying to say and the way it advances the story as it exists, is that a lesser movie on our rankings than the Clone Wars, the collection of 4 episodes that were kind of at the start of the animated series that got much better as time went on, but the actual movie is kind of just whatever. I don't, maybe you know what I think, I guess, but like, what do we want to do? Do we want to put the Clone Wars here and then Attack of the Clones maybe above it? Or do we think the Clone Wars movie is better than Attack of the Clones?
Jen, without tipping your hand too much, how much higher did you put Clone Wars, the movie?
It's bad. It's not.
You knew you weren't ranking the entire series, right? It was just the movie.
Okay. Yes, but I couldn't help myself. So I had the Clone Wars at number 7.
Oh, that's
all right.
That's
so
high.
It's not like in the top, but it's higher than a bunch of other things. So,
and Jen, just because we're in full disclosure mode, and you are welcome to tease me at any time if this feels like teasing. When was the last time you watched the Clone Wars movie?
Today.
Oh, prior to today,
like a year or 2 ago. I don't know.
All right.
Where's that log on Letterboxd? I didn't see that, Jen.
Well, I guess
I didn't be there for a few days. Come on. We know how this works.
I know. I'm just teasing.
Wow. Oh, you mean from today? Yeah, I guess I should have. I didn't I had 15 minutes left. I didn't finish it. So that's probably why I am kind of weird about if I don't watch every single minute of the movie, it doesn't get logged on.
But it does count as you can very strongly be like, I watched it today, even though you
because I've seen it before. It's a rewatch. that has different circumstances.
All right.
Please.
No, that's fair.
But yeah, no, I think I've multiple times fired this up in the hopes that my kids will think Stinky is cute.
I've done that move.
And
this will win the kids over. Then we'll watch every episode of the show.
But apparently the animation style not doing it for them because they're all one of my kids at least is all in on the new Maul series, and because part of that is because the animation style. So
you need to get John to play a bunch of PlayStation 2 games with them, and then they'll be locked in on that animation style. They're like, oh, this looks great. This really captures it.
So for the activity, I will say I had Attack of the Clones at 10 and I had the Clone Wars at 9. But I am absolutely fine flipping those in light of the concessions we've made elsewhere. Well, they're pretty equal. I mean, I'm taking PT's language of movies that toggle. I think you articulated exactly right. Attack of the Clones, we expected more from, and it fell far short of that. Clone Wars, we expected basically nothing from, and it maybe barely exceeded that, right? Or maybe, sorry, Jen, sorry for the barely.
No, it's okay.
So
it's okay.
I'm pretty equal on these two, and I would be happy to flip those two either way.
Which of these two movies would you, if there suddenly was a cutoff, where it was actually you're only allowed to have 9 Star Wars movies, which one would you prefer to have? Attack of the Clones or the Clone Wars?
Well, are we doing a butterfly effect thing where the series doesn't happen because
this movie didn't happen? You can only watch this for you could watch the series, but you can't watch the movie.
Oh.
Or you can watch the movie into the series, but you can only watch episode 1 and episode 3.
Well, then really I'm okay with what Greg is proposing. I'm fine. Yeah, we can. It's fine. It's fine.
I don't. I just think
survived. It's all good. It's fine.
I think if we're at the coin flip stage, and maybe we're not. Again, Jen is no, we're not. We're the Clone Wars.
And to be fair, to be fair, I also lost my mind in the theater when Yoda's flipping around during that lightsaber duel. That was incredible.
The only thing similar is the well documented Captain picking up the hammer in Avengers Endgame, right? Like, it was that level. For
Yeah.
people who weren't there in 2002, it was that level of the crowds going absolutely nuts. And the move when he holds out his hand and it flips off his belt, you're like, he doesn't even have to pick it up. He's the best. Like, it was unbelievably cool.
And it really was for younger me at that moment. It really was. At the time, I thought this is everything I could have wanted. because I've watched my VHS tapes of the original trilogy over and over and over again, and I've only dreamed of seeing Yoda in full force. And so maybe you've talked me into it. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay putting Attack of the Clones above the Clone Wars.
Okay, all right.
I'll make my peace with it. I will try to detach my love of the Clone Wars as a whole enterprise and the characters within, and just
when we have the energy to do
Snips
a
and
ranking,
Sky Guy, they're just they're going at it right from the first scene in this movie. It's great.
I love animated Kenobi too, who hasn't gotten a shout out. James Arnold Taylor is
and
very
Asajj.
good.
Kenobi and Asajj starts here.
It's true.
Like,
I will.
It's great.
I will agree with all of that. I will say, not to bury it, because it seems like we may have decided to put it at 10. I would say another downside for me of the Clone Wars movie is when they brought back the movie actors for some of the roles, and I'm like, that's not what animated Mace Windu sounds like. That's not what animated Count Dooku sounds like. This doesn't make sense, even though it made sense at the time to get the big actors to do it. I will also say, for those of you out there who may be listening who are younger than us, who are thinking when we're describing this crazy theatrical reaction, which we all experienced to Yoda getting his lightsaber and getting into his first lightsaber fight, and you were like, wow, I can't believe I missed the golden age of Star Wars. I want to let you know it took barely 24 hours from when it actually was released in theaters before I had the first conversation with someone in real life who was like, they ruined Yoda. They ruined the character of Yoda. His whole thing was he would never fight because he's too wise and he just talks, and they ruined it because George Lucas is an idiot. So don't worry. That was always there. That was always around. And it'll even happen when we get to the movies from the 80s. Okay, so we're thinking number 10, The Clone Wars, and number 9, Attack of the Clones. Is that correct? Okay.
And we're 1/3 of the way there. All right.
We only have about 75 more to go. Okay.
But our turn orders have gotten screwed up in some ways.
We have. Yeah, Greg, that Attack of the Clones would end up being your turn. I mean, should we just stick with the turns as they're written out, or do we just go with now Greg says something? It depends how much Greg feels about not being able to propose something right now.
I think I got first crack at Attack of the Clones, so I'm okay. Right? Like,
yeah, you did put it out there.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll say that you put Attack of the Clones out, I guess, there as a first offer, even though you kind of really first offered the Clone Wars. Okay.
Just
and
final shout out, the scene where, I shouldn't be mentioning this, but the scene where they're like trying to figure out where the planet went, and then Yoda goes, lost a planet, Master Obi-Wan has. This is so great. Brings me so much joy.
That little scene.
That's my way of saying I've made my peace. You've reminded me of all the things I love about Attack of the Clones, so I'm okay with this.
That's what it's like. Oh, right. When he's in class, he sounds like he does on Dagobah. That makes sense. Like, you know, that's his teaching persona. You know, he gets into character when he's starting to give his lessons, and that's who he is.
I don't know anything about that.
No, how could we? Number 8, I already sort of implied this. This is where I would put the Phantom Menace, and we can discuss. But similar to, again, I think similar to Attack of the Clones. I respect and agree with both of you that maybe it's a notable gap between these two movies. But I think it is a similar thing of great. Like, have so much fondness for it. I had a great time seeing it. I was not in that group of people who saw it and was like, oh no, I'm so let down by the end. I was on the ride the whole way at the midnight showing, which I showed up to at 7:45 to get ready to get my seats in the theater with a group of like 12 people. And some of us did, some people didn't really like it, but me and like the core friends that were sitting near me, we were like, yes, we're down. We love this. But we're getting to the halfway point of this list, right? Like when we were past a third, and we're approaching the halfway part, and it's going to get a little bit tough. And there are some issues with this movie that are the prequel issues. So yeah, I think with all of its positives and with the love that it has from that 25th anniversary screening, and a lot of people feeling like, oh, we're recovering it, and this is good. I never had to recover it. I always liked it, but I would never say it was much higher than this personally. And again, I mean, I would say technically, although this could change for my personal ranking, I did put Solo above both of these movies because I was like, Solo, fun. But everything you say about Solo is right, and maybe that's much more creatively bankrupt, and it's a problem. But anyway, number 8, Phantom Menace. That's my proposal.
Yeah, that was my number 9, so I'm totally fine with this. Greg, where did you have it?
Okay. When I wrote down the names, I forgot Rogue One. So technically, Rogue One was on this line on my piece of paper, but then I realized that before we started recording, I was like, that is completely wrong. So this is where Phantom Menace would belong. But I gotta be honest to my piece of paper. My piece of paper has some edits on it because this is where I screwed up. But Phantom Menace works for me. I agree. It was always going to be, just like it's in the middle. I think it's bold. It's wonderful. I think the re-release, as PT said, did so much. I had the poster up until recently. I can't even remember what poster's behind me anymore. It's great. I loved the whole carnival of its release. I still love to get out my cups and my pogs from the Pizza Hut games and all a million other things. It's a really special movie. It's also just a weird movie. Which I kind of love. Like, you can imagine if this is the first movie that had actually come out, like we wouldn't have any other Star Wars movies. And I say that with full love, but like it's just delightfully weird. And I agree with where they kept landing on Ringerverse. They're like, say whatever you want about Phantom Menace, Duel of the Fates rocks. And like you leave that movie on a high, and it's kind of it's the Mission Impossible final reckoning of its time, where you're like, I can forgive a lot of these sins along the way because I got this incredible final sequence. And just to really date myself, so that Christmas 99, my sister had gone to college, and I was still in high school. And that was just when like pirating and movies and music was like really hitting big. And so my Christmas present from her were 2 DVD ROMs of the burned copies of a handy cam version of Phantom Menace. So I would just cue it up exactly to like the like, here we go, and the drum beats and the Kaju coming out of the fog. I watched that last battle like 100 times that winter because the DVD or the VHS was, I think, the next spring or something. You used to have to wait a really long time to get it. So,
well, because it's still played in the theaters through Christmas. Like,
that makes
putting
sense
it back out.
My version of that is I wore out the soundtrack.
Yeah,
like I've probably listened to the soundtrack of the Phantom Menace probably more than any other Star Wars movie.
Nice.
That's really weird to admit, but
did you get the soundtrack early enough for the track listing to spoil the movie, or did you buy it?
Yeah, but I don't know. My brain, I'm good at compartmentalizing, so I think my brain was like, just forget that, nothing to see here.
My version of it was, I didn't look at the soundtrack. I was trying really hard to avoid spoilers. Mainline episode Star Wars movies that have come out, not when I was 4 years old, but when I was aware of things and there was the internet, I was like, I'm avoiding spoilers. I don't want to know anything. Blah, 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 blah. And I did a really good job, except for the day before the Phantom Menace. One of my friends told me, "Oh, I heard on the radio that the soundtrack gives away the name of a character who dies." And I think he was telling me to be like, don't look at the soundtrack if you go to Newbury Comics or Strawberries or wherever I might go, and there might be the soundtrack. But the problem was, as he said that, my brain, even at that stage, immediately was like, well, it can't be Obi-Wan, and it can't be Anakin, and it can't be Palpatine. It's got to be Liam Neeson, like Liam Neeson does. And it's got to be Natalie Portman because she's going to be the mom of the kid, so it's got to be Liam Neeson's character.
That was known, yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I guess he's going to die in this movie. I guess that makes sense. And so I spoiled myself by overanalyzing a spoiler warning that I was given, which, that really tracks. 2 other things I want to say briefly on the Phantom Menace from 2 different directions. One, this is clearly Jasmine's favorite prequel. She thinks Jake Lloyd has been unfairly treated. She thinks he is great. She loves him. She thinks he's the cutest. And clearly the better Anakin, and Hayden Christensen could only dream of being as enjoyable as a character. Parentheses. She also, the first time we watched Attack of the Clones, said that might be the worst movie I've ever seen. And then only after watching it with me did she realize that when she saw Attack of the Clones when it came out, she disliked it so much she never watched Revenge of the Sith because she also doesn't really care. It was just like blockbusters for her, and she was like, "Oh, the last one was so bad, I'm not going to see that," but had forgotten. She thinks he's a little better in Revenge of the Sith and much better in Ahsoka. Anyway, that's one thing. Jasmine loves Phantom Menace, and as far as she loves any Star Wars movies, and that's one thing. On the opposite side, I do have a friend. I will say it's the same friend who tried to give me a spoiler warning without fully understanding it, who only generally knows about Star Wars movies. He has an 8-year-old child who was like, "I want to watch Star Wars," and he texted a group thread that included me and a couple of other friends who he knows are more into this to be like, "Well, how should I do this? Like, what's the order I should watch them?" And before I saw it, one of them said, "You should start with the Phantom Menace. There's a kid, and the kid's like the kids." And this friend has 3 children to whom he has shown the Star Wars movies. And I said, "That sounds like a bad idea. You should watch them in release order." But I defer to this other friend who actually has children. So let them listen to him and see how it goes. And they watched the Phantom Menace. And my friend was like, "This movie's terrible. This movie is awful. I can't believe that you asked me to watch this movie again." So different vibes. Different people think different things is all I'm going to say about the Phantom Menace. It's a land of contrasts. Jen, it's your turn.
Mean, we should also just note everybody's talking about Phantom Menace right now because tariffs and trade routes and so on. Yes. So there is like this little bump it's getting in 2026, I feel like, because people are like, George Lucas was right all along. So
if you want more of our thoughts, there's also an entire episode, which I thought I was going to say before we talked about it, but now we've talked about it. Maybe all the stories I said are on there too, but we did a anniversary re-release episode.
All right. So my number 7 was Clone Wars, but we've already placed that. Okay. So I believe I have to go to my next one that we had, like the lowest one that we haven't taken yet.
I think that makes sense.
Right? Yeah. And that would be The Force Awakens. I'm actually really surprised at how low I put this movie. And again, so earlier I kind of was trying to be cagey not to spoil this, but like the drifting and the rise and fall of some of the trilogies, I think does go kind of like people have now soured on the sequel trilogy. So that has, despite my feelings about each of the individual movies in that trilogy, has kind of like let the ranking for all 3 of those films like slip like a little bit probably. Whereas because of the anniversary re-releases and kind of having to like and having occasion to revisit the prequel trilogy, those movies sort of drifted up a little bit. Because if, again, the Letterboxd ranking that I had all 3 of the prequel trilogy movies like way at the bottom, like as like pretty low. And I do distinctly remember a student like accosting me at the end of a semester to be like, "I saw your Letterboxd rankings. Why is Revenge of the Sith so low?" And I was like, "What? Like, why? What are you talking about?" And so it's interesting to see how those have floated around over time. But I do think that ultimately I placed this here because it is on the one hand, the miracle of this movie is that it introduced a series of new characters that I came to really care about, and obviously in Rey, Poe, and Finn. But then on the other hand, it kind of squanders that cachet by being like, "Oh, but let's go back to our original trio from the original trilogy," and kind of relying on the legacy sequel factor of it a little bit too much. And it's using that as a crutch. So when I think about this as a whole movie, I mean, there's also, I just mentioned this on our Devil Wears Prada 2 episode, but the big criticism of this movie, despite how fun it was to watch and all these new characters and it's so exciting, does kind of like when you squint at it, it's just like ripping off A New Hope. And it's hard to avoid. Once I heard that criticism and someone pointed that out to me and I realized, oh wait, you're right. It's hard to forget that factor. So that is all the ways in which, but now that I'm saying it, like it's kind of lame that I put it this low. I don't know. Where is it for everybody else?
This is exactly where I had it. I'm actually not here for the "it's just a New Hope" criticism because nobody felt that way until like a month after release. Everybody just decided that, and we all had to just sign on to that. I think so. I actually just listened to 70 Millimeter. Did an episode. They did an episode on each of the sequel trilogy in I think February, and I'm just into my queue now. And they reminded me, Force Awakens is great, and the casting is not easy, and they nailed it. Like, there is nothing wrong with the design of Rey, Finn, and Poe, and the actors that they got into those roles. And it's like, because it's so flawlessly done, it's easy to dismiss, but it's like, no, they nailed it, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. I actually don't even agree with you about the legacy characters take it over. I think it's a much more balanced version of the kind of legacy sequel model. And I think, obviously Luke doesn't get served because he's just not meant to be. But I have very few complaints about The Force Awakens to this day. I think it was really new and exciting. I guess, there are some pieces where you're like, okay, so Kylo can stop blaster bolts with his mind, but we're just not going to talk about that or have him do that ever again. And he can also freeze anybody he wants so that they can't move, but we're also not going to talk about that again ever. And so I think it is fair to say that most of my problems with Force Awakens are the pieces that don't get picked up in Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Maz, I think, kind of just becomes less cool in hindsight because of those other two movies. But I mean, Hux in his speech and the fascism of it all, it's all really good. And I am much more here for the J.J. Abrams 2009 Star Trek rips off Star Wars than the Force Awakens rips off Star Wars discourse. But those are my internet discourses of choice. Thank you.
Well done.
Well, so I think this brings up an interesting question. When we're making this list, how much do we judge an individual movie against its trilogy, right? Because I think, to me, a lot of the things that when I look back at The Force Awakens, I'm like, wow, this had so much verve and so much potential. But then when you kind of look at what happened with the storylines, especially with the 3 new characters, it's like kind of unsatisfying. How much of that is just Rise of Skywalker's fault, we can debate. But like, you know what I mean? Like there was so much, for lack of a better word, hope that this movie started. And then I start to wonder in retrospect, like how much of it did it actually cash in on that and reach its potential?
That is a fair question. I've got a couple things I want to say. First, not to counter Greg's point, but I will say, in the car leaving the theater, my friend Rob said, it's kind of just the same thing as A New Hope, right? Like on opening night. So
that's patient zero. I'm coming for you, Rob.
It might be him. It might be him. So, it's there, but it was good. I also had a different friend who I won't name because he's less into like Star Wars. Like he's not like a fan. He's just like their movies. He goes and sees them. Who is like, it's
Antonio.
Good. No, I actually don't know. It would be curious to get Antonio's ranking on this. Antonio, if you listen to this, you should submit your rankings in the comments, just so we can know what they are and what does not place, was not seen. But yeah, I think this movie's so good for like 30 minutes, like unquestionably good, and the feeling in the theater 10 years after the prequels ended, and 3.5 years after we've had the upended the expectation of we're never getting Star Wars movies again, to be this like, I was so nervous. I was just like, what if this is bad? What if this is brackets what the Rise of Skywalker ended up being? Like, what if it's just this weird like corporate mess of like fan service that doesn't make any sense? And then that first half hour is so good, and you're just like, oh my god, they're nailing it. And then what a buddy of mine said, again, this was like 6 months later. He was like, once Han Solo shows up, like Han Solo's good, but there's just too many characters that we have to follow. Like there's like one person too many, and it all gets a little bit too muddled. And like the momentum never stops, but also we're cutting between too many things. And I think there is something to that. I also think there's something so weird about the like upgrade of the Death Star that everyone across the galaxy can see the laser that's being fired and they know where it's going. But like
Neil deGrasse Tyson, God,
sure. But I just think that sequence like is trying to cram in exposition, and that's a problem. This also has, again, for our youngins out there who maybe don't remember, it's so weird to recall this movie came out at a time when people were just like very clearly, as a society, the prequels are bad and everything about them was bad, and we all wish this couldn't be we need Star Wars movies that aren't the prequels. This movie begins with the opening line, "This will begin to make things right." And everyone knew that was new Star Wars saying, "We're really sorry about the prequels. We're going to make good movies." And then this movie became and remains the highest grossing movie in domestic box office of all time. So that was the attitude. And that was what people were thinking. So that's great in some ways. We get all these cool puppets and we get all this like, let him fuck in, and we get this feeling. And I'm more with Greg. I'm not saying, Jen, that you are like, this movie is too much like A New Hope, but I'm with Greg that it's like the remix of those elements works to the point where I'm like, I don't feel like it's just A New Hope again. And the degree it is, who cares? Because we have all these great new characters. We'll see where they go. And like, that's great. And that works really well. And people really did respond to it. The thing that people that like lets this movie down, and I think also kind of like is the quicksand upon which the sequel trilogy was built, and potentially the whole New Republic era is built, is they were like, we can never talk about politics. I have heard rumors about like what was happening in the I think there was basically a writer's room once the purchase happened and Kathleen Kennedy took over, and it was like all these people, and for a while George Lucas was in it, and it was like J.J. Abrams, Michael Arndt, Lawrence Kasdan, Simon Kinberg, and Dave Filoni, and Kathleen Kennedy and George Lucas, and they were in a room and they were working on this, and they're working on what the stories would be, and throwing things out there. And Lucas kept being like, and the New Republic, and everyone else was like, no one wants to hear about the government, George. No one cares what the politics are. And at the time, that was the prevailing feeling, but clearly they never figured it out, and it never makes sense, where it's like there's a government but there's also a resistance, but the resistance is the government. They're not resisting the government, they're resisting the First Order. The First Order, no one really knows what they are, but they're the Empire, but also they're not in power, they're just off somewhere, but they're being resisted by the resistance, and the resistance doesn't like, it's just like, what are you talking about? And it just feels so much like there's X-Wings and TIE fighters, stop asking questions. And that's a problem, and that problem, it's less of an issue for the sequel that we like, but I think carries forward in certainly The Rise of Skywalker. So I think all of that being said, there's a lot of great things in this movie. This was the other one I rewatched to prepare for this, and I was like, yeah, that's really fun. It's a great time. There's flaws, and there's those problems, and it gets a little rushed towards the end where we're just constantly moving. We don't really get a lot of time to react to things. But this movie's really good. I just think I also had it at number 7 because there's 6 better Star Wars movies, not because this movie is like not good. It's just because
I was going to say, as
really
we
good,
kind
and there's 6 better movies.
Yeah, here. I mean, as we pivot to the top half of this list, I do think we need to our reasoning needs to start from a positive place as opposed to like, I think to decide what's at the bottom, you kind of have to start to nitpick at like, well, what are the things that I don't like about these movies, and are those the worst things, right? But I think as we kind of start to move to the upper half of the list, then it's like, well, what do I love the most? I think too, right? And so there's a lot to love in this movie. I think the most magical thing that it captures, and again, this goes back to what you said earlier, like part of it's casting, but the chemistry between those 3 new actors is so, and the script is like so snappy, and like just the like something really simple and innocuous, like Finn and Poe being like, are you gonna go? Are you like that back and forth they have when they're about to escape, and then Rey being like, stop holding my hand, and like so much of that kind of stuff is like captures the spirit of Star Wars and the original, and like what we love about the original trilogies especially so well. And also we have gone way too long without mentioning King Among Droids, BB-8. Who knew that they could come up with a droid that could potentially compete with R2-D2, right? If that on paper seems like an impossible task that no one should try to do, and yet they really did it with his little like lighter thumbs up, and he's rolling around like a ball. Like it's amazing. He's adorable. I love him so much. My droid ranking probably is R2, Chopper, and then BB-8, but it's like those are my top 3. Like that's he made it.
Emu sobbing in the corner.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's just a little too sad. He's just a little too sad to make the rankings. Right?
That's not going to help him.
Jen, I agree ultimately with what you're saying. I agree. And, because we're sort of comparing and we've been building, maybe this is a problem of building from the bottom up, is focusing too much on the negatives. But yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying. And, the knock of like, this is just a fan film. This is just trying to like capture all those little like moments. and that's a problem that's carried forward in newer Star Wars, and because it doesn't have that like central guru who, like, you could feel like, okay, this person is making the decisions because this is their thing, and sometimes those decisions are terrible, but like, okay, we're gonna roll with it because that's the guy. Sure, that could be an issue, but like, it works really well here, and it handles it so well, and it is nice to be back in that mode when we come back to it. And I think there's a lot more to say that I don't want to get into till we get into the following movie to this, which I think does a great job of picking up what this movie put down and carrying it forward. And so to go back to what you were saying earlier, which maybe is negative, and I apologize, but I don't hold the sins, quote unquote, of the trilogy against this movie, because I hold it firmly only against the third chapter, which we already ranked last, because that's the one that I think lets the team down, when I think the first two work really well together. And I think, it's a flaw, perhaps, that this movie, The Force Awakens, is so much like mystery boxes of like, here's questions. But then as the answers start to be flipped over in the next movie, I'm like, great, I love all these answers. This is cool. Like, sometimes the answer is that didn't matter. Awesome. Like, that's fun. Like, cool, move on. Let's do that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot really good here. And again, it's not to say this movie deserves to be in the lower half of the list because of whatever, like it's that low. I just think that like we're, again, I love the prequels. We've got the first two prequels, and then we have the first of the sequels kind of in this little cluster together here at the top half of the bottom half, if that makes sense. And it's like, yeah, but I love those movies. Like, these are all great movies. Like, this is great. It's only because we've got so many more great ones to talk about in the next 2.5 hours.
So let's do that. Greg, what's your number 6?
Well, I just didn't get to break in. I just want to say, Rey's an all-timer character for me. So great. And I would put the 5 minutes where she's introduced from when she's scavenging and slides down the hill and then up until she's sitting with the helmet on her head. That is such better characterization than like the vast majority of Star Wars. So it's really that. And then again, another jaw-dropping moment when the lightsaber flies past Kylo and lands in her hand. And that was a kind of a spoiled thing, depending if you looked at the wrong toys. But all of a sudden it was like, that was another like cheers and whoops movie in the theater. All right. So I believe we're at my number 6, right? And I'm doing pretty good so far. I don't want to jinx it, but it gets really hard moving forward from here. And honestly, the top 6 here, I think you could shuffle most of these around and I'd be like, I'll accept it, because there's a big jump around here for me personally, in terms of quality. So the next one for me, this is where Rogue One landed. And it's a hard one to place for me. I think, we've been talking a lot about what do you do with like the rest of a trilogy? What do you do with Andor being the greatest Star Wars, creation maybe of all time? And yet it redeems some of the flaws in Rogue One, but it also feels very unrelated to Rogue One in a strange way, considering it's like a spinoff of one of its characters. So I really tried to set Andor totally aside, and I thought about Rogue One. To me, Rogue One has the messiest first 30 minutes of a Star Wars movie. Like, you're jumping around, you don't get a crawl, you get a time jump, and you get, I think, 4 planets, all with the first time we've ever seen labels of planets on screen. And I get that they were trying to do something different, but all of that, the first time I saw it in the theater, I was lost entirely. The middle section, once you actually finally start hooking up with Jyn and Cassian and K2, starts to cook. And I do think this is among the greatest space battles that we have. It's just really difficult for me to kind of clean all that up and forgive the first half of the movie, because I don't think this movie really gets going until the attack on Edu. Like, I would even write off a lot of Jedha and a lot of Saw Gerrera. I think that's pretty slow and doesn't totally work for me. But then we get the banger of a song as the rebel fleet, the starfighters attack on Edu, cutting to Scarif. Scarif is pretty incredible. I love Krennic shouting out in the control room, "Are we blind? Deploy the garrison." I love Melshi freaking Melshi is there going like, get on that one. Tell them that there's 50 rebels going to pad 2. Like all of that end stuff works so well. I'm not even talking about the Darth Vader stuff, which is like I'm full. Please don't make me eat a bag of chips after my giant meal or whatever. And then I also think this movie looks really great. I have no problem with CGI Tarkin. That's another internet thing I just don't care about. My favorite anecdote is I saw this with my wife's stepfather, which the two of us going on a date is a very interesting thing considering they were like maybe a year married, but the two of us went out to see this movie together without our respective wives. And the credits rolled and he goes, the CG characters, they think they've got it. They really don't have it. And I was like, well, I thought Leia didn't look that good, but Tarkin looked really good. He said, oh, Tarkin was CG? Like, he only thought Princess Leia was CG. So I was like, well, that just seals the deal for me. So Jen is right. We protecting what we love. I love Rogue One, but when it gets hard, this is where I put Rogue One.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the top half of the list of Star Wars movies. Like, everything's good. I mean, everything's great from here on out. I would even go so far as to say we're already at the great. I agree with a lot of what Greg is saying. I enjoy that jumping around opening a little bit more than I think most people do in Rogue One. And I also think just because there's a scene where Donnie Yen takes, as a blind swordsman, takes on a squadron of stormtroopers with a stick, I can't say no to Jedha. Like that part's great too. Like what? Yeah. That said, this is also one of the one. This is a movie where I was very relieved at it. Like maybe that's not like doesn't sound so positive, but I was like, yes, this is good. Like this is what I want a spin-off Star Wars movie to be. It's about people I don't really know with like, okay, there's like young Mon Mothma from the deleted scenes for Revenge of the Sith. That's crazy. They brought her back. Too bad she'll never have anything else to do in Star Wars. And there's some very bad cameos. I think that's actually probably the worst part of it is the like Ponda Baba, Dr. Evazan, like, oh, these guys from the cantina are here. It's like, okay. And like they kind of cram 3PO and R2 in, and Bail Organa comes back. That was fun. But for the most part, the returning character was the Death Star. And a little bit of Tarkin and a little bit of Vader, of course. But I just was like, yeah, this is the kind of thing that I want. And I thought that worked really well, even though it does not take reading much about the movie and the sort of troubled production of it to realize like, oh yeah, this thing's barely stitched together and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like why these would be put together in this order intentionally, as opposed to sort of assembled after the fact from like what they had and sort of simplifying it because Tony Gilroy, hero of Andor, came in and was like, what is happening? Like, what are you guys doing? And I think, to Greg's point, I think a lot of people would agree that like once it gets to that bombing run on Edu and all that action starts happening, and then we start building into the final, that's the part where we got the Tony Gilroy fingerprints, where the story gets massaged, stuff got taken out, and things got streamlined to where they made a lot more sense, and that does work really well. Anyway, yeah, so I love Rogue One. Personally, this is another jostle. It's I for a long time included Force Awakens in this. Maybe this is Jen's sequel. It's faded down where the Force Awakens is clearly not in this jostling for me recently. But like I kind of go between like, do I want to put Revenge of the Sith? It's clearly crucial over this, or do I actually like Rogue One more? On my list, I had Revenge of the Sixth in at fifth. And Revenge of the Sixth, if you will, and then Rogue One a step above that at 5. Now, I could go either way. We're negotiating, we're jostling. I don't feel strongly one over the other, and I think there's really strong cases to be made about the importance of Revenge of the Sith, the legacy of it, blah blah blah. That it should be a little bit higher. It's a Lucas movie. I think there is value in that. That said, I probably would choose again if the bottom line, and maybe this is the bottom line for me, is it's like there's a cutoff and you could only watch this movie for the rest of your days. I'd probably take Rogue One over Revenge of the Sith, only because I want to be able to revisit those characters and those moments. Greg.
So I just want to toss in. I just jumped up and disappeared, but I was listening, and you're right. Donnie Yen deserves salvation. I was trying to find, and I could not, but I swear I still have it. It might be in my office at work. Rogue One is kind of the dark times of Jen and I's friendship. Like, she'd moved away. She didn't care about me anymore. She hadn't invented a podcast for us to hang out. But she did go to Disneyland and get me a Rogue One t-shirt, because you could only get the logo t-shirt, I think, at the Disney Outpost. And so I have a little Post-it Jen wrote and stuck in the envelope that says, like, maybe these reshoots aren't that big a deal. Let's still believe, Rogue One. And I still have it. And it makes me happy to think about that as well. Because remember, it was that when you heard about the reshoots, it's like, oh, this thing's in trouble. I love the first teaser trailer just has Alan Tudyk in his mocap suit in one shot. Like, they didn't even put in the droid for the first trailer for this movie. So Jen, you believed back then. What do you believe about Rogue One now?
I'm just still chuckling at that. I was a naive optimist even then. It's like, that hasn't changed.
Rebellions are built on hope.
So I landed with this in my number 5 spot, but it really was a toss up between this and my number 6 spot. So, which I'm not going to reveal yet. And now that I'm hearing you talk, I'm like, wait, maybe I should switch them. So I'm totally fine with this in this spot. And I think that, again, sort of like how it's hard to separate the Clone Wars movie from the Clone Wars series, I do think it's hard to separate Rogue One from Andor, just because one birthed the other, right? And it's just, and it was like refreshing in a way, tonally. Like, I really remember when Cassian shoots that guy at the beginning, and you're just like, oh. Like, isn't he the hero? What did he just do? Right? Like, that was like a game changing moment. And I have a lot of love with this movie. I have more of a problem with the CG characters. Like, the uncanny valley factor is not as bad for Moff Tarkin, obviously, but I remember at the time being like, why did we have to have de-aged Carrie Fisher, like, or whatever it is? Like, what are we just don't have her turn around. Like, it was so easy to not do that. And I think, to me, it really deflated the momentum, the high of seeing Vader just Vadering it down that hallway, right? And that's so thrilling. And then to be like, wah wah, like, here, look at Uncanny Valley Leia is it does knock it down a little bit. So I think that's why I'm kind of willing to swap it, even though I had it in a higher spot.
Well, and you're reminding me that the first shot of Grand Moff Tarkin, it's the back of his head, and you see his face reflected in the mirror. Right. And I remember in the theater being like, oh, that's clever. They couldn't really do this well, so they're hiding it. And then he just turns around, and I'm like, oh, they're going for it. Like, it was such a crazy moment, and it's kind of lost to history because now we just accept that was the choice they made.
But on the more positive side, too, because we haven't mentioned this part yet, the ending with Jyn and Cassian, I remember being like, this is the most emotion I've ever felt for two people I knew were going to die from the start of this movie. Like, that's like, you know what I mean? Like, considering you kind of like, well, none of these people can make it out just by nature of where this is in you didn't think so?
Well, I was like, I don't know, like, and, again, it was the sort of like, the Disney movie, like, these guys could like just have been in the background. We just never saw them. Like, there's all kinds of characters that get introduced in Star Wars, and it's like, they've always been around. It's like they were there on Endor. They just were on a ship we never like zoomed into. So I wasn't certain, and I was like, not to be like Disney bad. Disney's a bad company, but I was like, do they want to have a Star Wars movie where like we introduce all these characters and they all die, and then they killed K2, and I was like, oh, everyone's gonna die. Like, if even the droid won't make it, like, this is all gonna go, like, they're not gonna make it out. Like, this is intense, and that, like, I found that very effective. I thought that worked personally.
Yeah, just Gino dials it up, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, and just their final scene where they're hugging as it is. It's just it's so tragic but so beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to
and
that.
Somehow, like, because of that, it was so effective that I had kind of forgot that, like, when they went back up into space, that what we were seeing was Vader arriving. So I was like, almost like, oh, right, like, Vader's coming. Like, that's what I was so looking forward to. But then I kind of, I was so wrapped up in these new characters.
Yeah.
That I forgot. But yeah, that said, okay. I mean, it sounds like both Jen and I had Rogue One at 5, but both of us are okay with lowering it to 6 because it sounds like we have different movies that we had at number 5. Because I was not being so coy and I just dropped the name of my movie, which I will officially put out now in number 5, and that is Revenge of the Sith, Star Wars Episode 3. Great movie. In my mind, clearly the best of the prequels. As someone who grew up, I know Greg always loves to say it's a great term, and I'm borrowing it from him from wherever he borrowed it. But we grew up in the dark times when it was like, what are we ever going to get? We had that first couple pages of the Return of the Jedi novelization that gave like a brief page and a half summary of like Palpatine and a fight by the lava between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker that led to him becoming Darth Vader. And it was like, oh my God, like what does that mean? What does that even look like? So this was the movie that gave us what we had wanted. And for not me, I love Phantom Menace. I love Attack of the Clones in their own way with noting that they have flaws, but there were people that were like, when are we going to get to the fireworks factory? When are we going to get to the point where we see the stuff that we wanted to see, which is the fall of Anakin Skywalker and the fight with Obi-Wan Kenobi? We got there. I mean, at this point, like there is an entire generation who just are like, by default, are like, well, this is clearly the best Star Wars movie. And so they may be being like, they're banging their table or whatever surface is near their podcast listening, being like, what is happening? Why is this even being brought up at number 5? I think there's 4 better Star Wars movies. And a part of that is because of my childhood. Part of that is because of, my thoughts on filmmaking and filmmakers, which we'll get into when we get there. But yeah, I mean, this movie is great. This is, again, I personally had it just outside my top 5, but in the top half. But I think this is a great necessary contribution to have to the Star Wars saga. And George Lucas's final triumph. It's not Pauline Kael. Who was there was a feminist critic who was like, this is like the best art of the 20th century, or the best art of the 21st century.
Camille Paglia, from Harvard, right? Yeah,
yes.
yeah. She
has a whole book
about how genius this is.
She watched it without sound. It was just like, you can see the colors and the movement, the like fight of good versus evil. Like you don't need to like listen to the wooden dialogue or whatever. Like she had barbs she threw in, but she's just like, it's so perfect. It's so like elemental in terms of how it displays things. Yeah. And many of the best prequel memes are from this movie, and there's a reason for that. So yeah, that's what I'll put out there. I don't know what you all feel or what you might want to put in here. We've so far not really fought, but maybe this is where the fighting begins, where we're suddenly at the like, oh, wait a minute, we're at the top. And which movie do we like more? Revenge of the Sith.
2 hours into our list and we haven't really fought. But yes, we agreed vehemently many times. But Jen, I'm going to defer to you because you had a different vote here, I believe.
Well, I actually don't know why I was being coy, because I also had Revenge of the Sith as my other choice. I guess I just didn't want to put definitively say it before we actually got to that discussion.
Okay, fair.
But yeah, I think, and this is the movie that has probably risen the most in my ranking over time, just because, again, I'm weak and I'm very susceptible to peer pressure and specifically discourse pressure. So when the ether is like, you're not allowed to like the prequel movies, then I'm like, well, I really like these, but I guess I'll put them down here, right? I was like, okay, I guess that's fine. But now that it's like more socially acceptable to be like, no, these movies are great. The Revenge of the Sith is the greatest of the 3 by a mile, and I think the way that it's telling the story and kind of cinches the trilogy together is so well done, so tightly wound in a way that when you go back and rewatch it, you're like, wow, yeah, there's so many things there's so many gears turning in this movie to get us to the of Darth Vader, and it's great. So I could say more, but I think I've been on other podcasts talking about this movie, so.
We also have an episode.
And we also did one.
Yes.
Yes. So there's plenty of positive takes about this movie out there from me.
Yeah, I will always remember and treasure till the day I die, maybe it'll be the last thing I think of, is laying down at, I'm sure, 3 a.m. after my midnight screening of Revenge of the Sith and just feeling this deep contentment. Like, we did it. It was complete and it was incredible. I loved this from the moment I saw it, and it's always been my favorite prequel. I don't have an accurate count, but prior to my let's watch these a million times for their anniversary, I would say this is easily double or triple the view count of the other prequels. Like, I will throw Revenge of the Sith on pretty regularly. My son and I on Star Wars Day this year, we got a real treat. We went and heard the Boston Pops play through the scores or selections from the scores of the 9 Skywalker movies. And we left, and the first thing he says, like, we got to watch Revenge of the Sith, Dad. I'm like, yeah, we do, buddy. Like, let's do it. I mean, we couldn't that night, and we haven't yet, but we will. I think the way the duel on Mustafar is what we imagined when we were 4, and it didn't disappoint us all the way through to there. I think Ewan's at his best here. I think it's not a hard competition, but Hayden's at his best. Natalie Portman, I think, is done dirty by the script and what Padme's given to do. There are plot lines and deleted scenes that gave her a little more. I don't know if I'm prepared to say they really redeemed that, but gave her more to do. And I love this one. And yeah, I really, I mean, that's the poster I still have up behind me, visual podcast viewers, listeners. Yeah, I love this one, and I had it exactly at number 5. So I'm quite pleased with where it ends up.
The only thing I will note is this movie came out when I was an adult, so I didn't have a childhood of treasure trove memories to build on it. But I think if I did have this movie on home video, home DVD, home Blu-ray, home streaming, home pirated copy, I would have watched the opening battle sequence 10,000 times. That would have been like every weekend. I would probably watch it 3 or 4 times, would be my guess, until they started putting out Clone Wars episodes, and then Clone Wars episodes could fill in that spot sometimes. But man, what a great opening. And there's a lot of great stuff in this movie, despite all the problems people have about George Lucas and his approach to the prequels. I think this one really comes together.
We haven't said the word operatic enough tonight, and this is the one that feels the most operatic to me in a just beautiful way. So yes, I know Jen PT wrote space fantasy. We would say space opera, and that's what we'd put here.
Okay. Fair.
You were my brother.
Jen, we're into the top. We're into the top 4.
We're not quoting these movies enough. I'm sorry. Like,
that's true.
You're right. This should be longer.
We did this all wrong. We should have done this in 2 episodes. So anyway,
who's to say we're not?
Okay.
You're the editor.
So it's my turn, right?
Yes, It's your turn. We're in the top 4.
So my number 4.
Where are you going to go?
This is really hard.
I'm so scared right now. I'm getting
my
really worried.
Things could get precarious.
My number 4 is Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
I'm pausing to see your reactions. Greg is pumping his fists. PT is nodding patronizingly.
No, I'm nodding like under
just PT resting patronizing face.
Yeah. RPF over
He's
here.
like, all right, you can have the opinion if you want. That's cute. Okay, but seriously, so yeah, obviously this was really hard. We're getting down to the wire here. I just felt like, see, there's no way to kind of share my reasoning without revealing what my other picks are, kind of, I guess. I don't know. So anyway,
tell us what you love about Return of the Jedi.
That's a great
Pick your own advice and start there.
So the reason, because some people actually might be like, why is this movie this high up on this list? There are people out there that would say that, I think. People we know who would say that. And so yes, what I love about this movie, all the things that people make fun of this movie for, I love. So all the stuff on Endor, justice for the Ewoks, stop making fun of them. They will eat you in your sleep. And the speeder bikes through the forest of Endor, Admiral Akbar, who's my favorite minor character of all time in Star Wars. All of his stuff is in this movie, and we go all the stuff at Jabba's palace. Boba Fett's going in the Sarlacc pit. Like, come on! Like, do I need to keep listing all the cool things that are in this movie? The death of Yoda is very impactful, and I don't know. Like, this movie is great, and it sure is it. Well, actually, and I think the thing people okay, let me start over. The thing people get wrong about this movie is they fixate on all the cuter stuff, like the Ewoks, or like people when they criticize this movie focus on that stuff, and they forget that all of the like major conversations between Luke and Darth Vader occur in this movie, and that all those final scenes where they're with the Emperor is just A+++, no notes. So good. So maybe that is why PT's giving me a look, because he remembers that, unlike other people, and is like, why didn't you put this movie higher? But I just feel like, again, it's like it really the thematic resolution of Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, the whole saga, like it's all happening here, and it is to me, it's done well.
No, my reaction was based on the fact that I feel like the next two movies on the list and then the top two movies on the list are clearly like those two. It's like 2 and 2, and I was like, which way is Jen going to go, or is it going to be a curveball? And you chose one of the two movies, and that makes sense. I will say I have Return of the Jedi one spot higher, like purely based on not wanting to think about it more than I already have, which again, I think about it all the time, but just thinking and being like, you know what? Like there's one movie I watched when I was 5 it may be the first movie I saw in the theater. It was either this or a re-release of E.T. So like, I love this movie and I'm just always going to love it. So it's going to be in my top 3. And I'm not really going to think too much harder about that. Like, so the fact that then you were like, some people might wonder why it's so high. And I'm like, no, wait, why is it so low? It's only at 4. But no.
I didn't say those people were here.
No, right. No, no, of course you are not. But yeah, it's, and also again, I am really only realizing this based on our conversation that I did have on some subconscious level, like if I could only have this many movies, if I could only have 3 movies, I want the original 3. So that's why I have them there. That's not a reason to have it be more higher than 4 on our list. I'm quite comfortable with it being 4 on our list. This movie's awesome. This movie rules. I said what I said about the opening sequence of Revenge of the Sith because I did watch the opening sequence, the Jabba sequence of Return of the Jedi, 1,000 times when I was growing up. That was the bite-sized. Yeah, that was the bite-sized Star Wars thing we had. That was like, I have 40 minutes to watch something before I have to go to, Little League or something. Like, I'm throwing on Return of the Jedi and I'm going to watch that. And I think that like there is there's interesting micro generations, which I think was discussed in the Revenge of the Sith episode. I won't belabor it. There's a micro generation that thinks Revenge of the Sith is the worst prequel because they grew up at the point when they were like, oh wait, I'm a teenager and I think this sucks because it's too CGI, whatever. And there's a micro generation older than me who think Return of the Jedi sucks because they hated the Ewoks because it was too cutesy. Whatever. This movie's great. This movie's incredible. Does Harrison Ford want to be there? I don't know. I think Harrison Ford might have thought his story ended at the end of A New Hope, but he's still good. Like, he's still having a good time. I have a good time watching him, at least. Maybe he's not having a good time. Does Carrie Fisher?
Counter argument to that is that Han Solo spends half of this movie a blind and is still charming and charismatic. Like, that's
Agreed. I was going to also say, does Carrie Fisher remember making the movie? Apparently she didn't, but whatever. She's great in it as well. Mark Hamill does his best acting until a later movie. In this one, he's great. And I will also say, if we're allowed to pick out some glup shittos, which we've not really been doing, are little minor characters. I have grown to the point where if I were needing to write like a 5 to 7 page essay about something, I could write an essay about how the Rancor Keeper exists as a character to prepare us for the fact that Darth Vader is going to turn good. Because everyone's deserving of love. Even the big monster that's in the basement that everyone's going to kill, someone loves him. And if someone loves you, you're worthy of being saved.
Wow.
Sorry, I was trying to Malakili cry for you. I don't know if the tone came in through right, or
I
if
think
it sounded
you needed more man boobs. to
Oh,
make it work.
that was my other appearance on a different podcast the other night. I think I surprised myself when I put this at 4 because this for a long time was my favorite Star Wars movie. I had the Drew Struzan posters for Empire and Jedi when the special editions came out, and the beautiful Jedi one with Chewbacca with his cool 80s hairdo and the green. Absolutely. I do think there's kind of a dead space in the middle. I could do a 5 to 10 page essay about where I fall asleep during every Star Wars movie and why. And there's kind of a long stretch when they leave Tatooine up until, things really get cooking and the Rebel fleet jumps. That slows down a lot that I think I struggle through, though. Again, there's a spot like that in most of these. Maybe not A New Hope, but most of these movies have a spot like that. I did fall asleep at Empire Strikes Back at the theater last year, and I'm really upset about it. I know, Jen. I know. Fine. I'll turn in my keys. I'm off the show.
You were making fun of me for falling asleep during Phoenician Scheme. Like, I feel better about that now.
Although, remember, I've seen Empire Strikes Back probably 200 times. So I really love Return of the Jedi. I felt like when I was making my list that the paint is just the OT in the top 3 spots, and I wanted to change it up a little, and I wanted to do something a little different, which is probably most of why it landed at number 4. I still think this is a great movie. I do agree. If nothing else, tonight's episode has been, let us tell you the things on the internet that we don't like and why they're not true. And I just agree with your whole list. And I do think just a shout out to the space battle, which is such a far step above A New Hope. And you think about how revolutionary A New Hope was, and then 6 years later they're able to do this. There's a memoir by one of the special effects guys who just uses the composite shot of, like, with the most models in a single shot of and you'd recognize the still immediately. And it's like hundreds of ships, and it's like incredible that we got there from here. So shout out to that. I also love Akbar. I'm not as big as Jen, but he's pretty awesome. And I love Wedge. I love Wedge getting to take down one of the control towers. Like, I love this movie a lot. So absolutely fine with it at number 4.
Just want to note our like, again, bottom half of the top half of our list. We have the 3 best space battles all in a row. We have Rogue One, Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi. Boom, bam, bam, bam. And I would say Return of the Jedi is still my favorite, but I recognize that very, very likely could be childhood love, and I have no problem with that because these are Star Wars movies, whatever. Like, why? I don't need to justify my lifelong affection, and that being a bias, quote unquote bias on this. Greg, we're down to 3.
Hey,
what do you want to put
why I
up
was
there?
pumping my fist so hard when Jen said Return of the Jedi is because I knew I would get to say this one. And I thought this was my controversial pick. And the fact that we're all, PT said it right, like the 2 pairs I think works well for me, and I could go either way. But I get to say Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, which is an absolute masterpiece. And I love The Last Jedi more than I love one of my children, but I won't say which. I'm just kidding. Please don't find this after I'm dead and talk to your therapist about it. The Last Jedi to me is a beautiful challenge. The Last Jedi takes what you think you know about Star Wars and it problematizes it. And it says, what if we don't get to have the easy answers? What if it's not exactly what you expect? And what if it all is messier than it should be? And I thought, for all of those reasons, the way it picked up on these wonderful characters we had introduced in Force Awakens and did really original, challenging things with them all. I understand a lot of the criticisms about, in particular, I think in my reading of the internet, the Canto Bight plot line is the most kind of derided because it's a little trickier, and some of the slow motion chase stuff. But to me, I don't see the flaws in that. I love the fact that we could build up a whole plot line that goes nowhere, because sometimes that's what happens in a war, right? Like that things don't work out and you don't get it all perfectly put together. I would say that my personal favorite Star Wars sequence, I I think across any of these movies is probably the throne room here. I think the way in which Rey and Kylo, the reveal of Snoke's death was incredible to me in the theater. That slow motion shot where they pull up next to each other and 1,000 Reylo's hearts go aflutter. What is it? A thigh touch, I believe, is what they celebrated so much in one of the leads. And then the action choreography of that fight. Ryan Johnson's genius move of having the curtain catch fire. We don't talk that often about movie making, but like how they did that with continuity blows my mind because it must have been so difficult. I'm sure they faked it a lot digitally. I'm not saying they did it exactly, but it's flawless and it's so stunningly beautiful. And it just, I think the take of putting it here puts us in line with a lot of mainstream critics that were like, oh, wait, a Star Wars movie can be good, like us good, not like good for the plebes, but really for us, it can impress us. And then you go from that sequence, then you go to the ski speeders on Crate and the Haldo maneuver, and then the ski speeders on Crate. And then the sequence where Luke comes and the music cue as he walks out and challenges Kylo. I get amped up every time still, and I like am sitting alone going like, yes, here it comes. He's gonna wink at 3PO, and then he's gonna walk out, and then Mark Hamill's 3 kids are gonna watch him go, and then he goes out, and then all that happens between Luke and Kylo is just perfect to me. I love this movie. I even love Broom Boy at the end. People who want to fight about Broom Boy, like, come on, like, let's just do something different. Let's break it up. So, number 3, I propose The Last Jedi. Thank you so much.
I also had this here. So cosign.
Yeah, I had it at 4 only because, again, I said I put the original trilogy up in the top 3. I did do the chalk move that Greg was mentioning, but like I flipped them back and forth. Like in the intervening years since this movie came out, Andor is the only thing that is challenging this movie for like the best thing that Star Wars has done since 1983, in my mind. And if you want to go back to 1980, as we will in our collective list, you could do that. This is so good. This is really good. And I find it frustrating that it's hard to talk about without sort of not triangulating, but at least like incorporating the fact that it is so hated in some corners and people really just don't like it. And whatever. There's lots of stuff that could be said about that like where that came from and what was motivating it and what was driving it. And maybe it was not actually anything to do with this movie or Star Wars and it was external forces. So that stuff I want to put aside. There are people who are legitimate Star Wars fans who had a legitimate negative reaction to this. And to them, I say, I'm sorry that you cannot enjoy one of the best Star Wars movies, one of our top 3. And I think, like, to me, very clearly, just like, one of the best things that's come out since the original trilogy, as I already said. But I do want to say just like for a couple of things to push back against people who don't like it. I think that both the critics that Greg was talking about, who were like, this movie's for us, and also some of the fans who really don't like it, latch on to a similar thing that I think is I hate to be like, you don't get it, but I think they don't get it. And it's that like, we have multiple characters in this movie across the first 2/3 of it who are like, you know what we should do is not do Star Wars. Like, we just shouldn't do that. Luke says it's time for the Jedi to end. And it's just sort of like, you know what? I pieced out. All this doesn't work. I put this theory out in front of Jen in person the other day in this conversation, because everything you're hearing, listeners, it's just what real life is like when we see each other. But I did put this out that like part of Luke Skywalker's character is like, you guys, I finished being the Jedi in Return of the Jedi, and then I watched the prequels, and the Jedi suck. Like, the Jedi are not good at their jobs, and so I don't think we should do that anymore. And that's not really completely what it is, but I think that the people who don't remember or aren't attached to that like visceral negative reaction to the prequels miss that element to the fact that like his character is like kind of a rejection of the Jedi that we got versus the Jedi we thought they were from the original movies, combined with Luke being in line with Ben Kenobi, in line with Yoda, someone who suffers a visceral, immediate, like devastating failure. And it's just like, well, I'm leaving. I'm going to go hide in a hut somewhere. See ya. And then hope someone will find me in the next generation and I can train them. But so like, he says that. And of course, Kylo says, kill the past, like, destroy it if you have to. Don't embrace that. Don't deal with that. And people are like, oh, they're saying, and because this movie has these twists and these turns and is sort of undermining what we were expecting, that means that's what this movie is about. This movie is about, let's blow up Star Wars. And if you liked what Star Wars was, you're dumb. And it's actually bad that you did that, and you should get with it. And you should instead be like the new people who are cool. And you're not cool because you like Star Wars. And they seem to have not watched the end of the movie, where it's reiterated Kylo Ren is the bad guy and wrong about everything he says and does. And he keeps making decisions that only make him feel worse and worse and be worse and worse. And he is like incredibly wrong about everything. And Luke Skywalker talks to his buddy Yoda, who is like, dude, you're wrong. And Luke's like, yeah, I guess you're right, that I was wrong and you're right. And then he shows up and he's able to do all the things that the Jedi fans, aka Rey, were asking him to do without compromising his values, by not actually fighting but doing this force projection thing, and then successfully saving everybody and leaving this legacy that ends with a bunch of characters in the universe who we don't know, and it doesn't really matter. They're just people who are in the background playing with Star Wars toys and dreaming of themselves being Jedi and being someone who can save the galaxy. The most pro Star Wars message I've ever seen in a Star Wars movie. And it's incredible. And that movie ended, and the credits started rolling, and I sat there in my seat going, this is a Star Wars movie that everybody's going to love. And it turns out I was wrong, but I love it and you two love it. And that's what matters. And that's why it's number 3 on our list.
So the conversation in person that PT is referring to was when we had the privilege of going to Disneyland for Star Wars night. And so at one point we were in an attempt to have a viewing of Figuring Dan and the modal nodes floating by on a raft on the Rivers America. Yes, Greg, you heard that right. That is the thing that you can go see.
Well, I remember your appearance on the Colby Cast 2 years ago where you unlocked that. So yes, I recall.
So as we're sitting around a table, like looking across the water, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Cantina band. We are having this conversation with our friends. Shout out to Jim. Shout out to Dave. Shout out to our new friend, Nathan, who is a random friend I had never met of my neighbor, or I guess technically my neighbor's nephew. And basically what happened was my husband, John, took me aside and he was like, there's this guy here with our neighbors. And he just corrected Jacob, who's my neighbor's nephew. He just corrected Jacob about the species of Ahsoka Tano.
And yeah, I don't know. This movie's great.
Well, and I'll just throw in that again, I think it is a fundamental misreading of the film, perhaps because emotion blinded them. But I did once get lectured by a guy in a Subway sandwich shop because I was wearing a Last Jedi shirt. And he's just like, you know what? People like you don't understand writing. And in my head, I'm going like, yes, me, the literature PhD, would like you, this man I just met on the subway or in a subway, to tell me I don't understand writing. Thank you so much, sir. But one of the things that I think people lose sight of is Luke didn't try to murder Kylo, right? Like that's the second of the Rashomon style. It's the one from Kylo's perspective. And he saw that in his mind. But when the true version comes through, it's like Luke says, like, for a fleeting moment, I hesitated. Like it was just like that. And like, if you can't accept that your greatest hero of all time could be so afraid of somebody he loves falling to the dark side, there are many books and legends about Leia not wanting to have kids because of that very reason. And just hesitating for a moment and thinking like, well, maybe I better for the good of the galaxy. Like, I don't understand it. I think Luke is right in line with what his character, and Mark Hamill got there eventually. So nerds on the internet should too.
Yeah. To add to that, there's the people who are like, but he, at the end of Return of the Jedi, he throws away his lightsaber and he's like, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. Like, I won't do that. It's nonsensical that he would do it, but they forget that Vader's taunting him, and he says like, sister, so, and then he's like, if you won't turn to the dark side, perhaps she will. And the threat of something to Leia gets him to attack Vader for like a solid minute and a half, maybe the best shot of the original trilogy, that sort of dolly to the side. And then only when he cuts off Vader's hand does he like snap out of it to be like, oh, right, bad, I shouldn't do that. So later, when he's more mature, he finds out that not only will his sister, but also everyone else in the galaxy will suffer because of this person. He has the same reaction, but instead of it being a minute, it's a second. And so it's like, oh no, he did mature. He did get better. He is actually improved. The problem is it was the wrong second and he got caught and it caused all these problems. So I don't know. It's very funny to me that people don't get that. But I also feel like a total jerk being like, I can't believe people just don't get it. But I think people just don't get it. Like I think Greg's right. Like the Rashomon element confuses them. They think when Kylo explains it, and I do think that's probably the moment when they shut down.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I can't believe Luke's evil. Oh, I can't believe Luke's a quitter. I can't believe Kylo is meant to be the person who's right. This movie sucks. I'm folding my arms and I'm not paying attention for the rest of it, except for the hyperspace Holdo maneuver, in which case I'm going to say that breaks canon because of reasons that I've just decided in my mind. What about number 2 on our list?
That's you.
That's me.
Right?
It is me.
So we only have 2 left, and I think it's the 2 we always knew we would end up with here. This is where all the hyperspace lanes have been pointing, but which order are you going with, PT? Because I think it's a real coin flip. I don't know which one you're going to say.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm a little worried I'm sticking to chalk, but I'm going to go for number 2, Star Wars, aka A New Hope, the original movie. I think there's a very strong argument that could be made, and maybe one of you will make it, for that movie being the number 1, because that's the start, and that's the only one that works on its own, because it kind of had to, because it was, when it was made, it was going to be the only one. And it's if I had the opportunity to make a Sight and Sound list of 10 movies to go towards the Sight and Sound poll, I would put Star Wars on it instead of the alternative on this list here, because of its importance for cinema. But for a ranking of Star Wars movies, I do think it comes in barely at number 2. The original Star Wars movie. This movie is incredible. Like, what are we talking about? This works so well. This is gangbusters from the opening shot to the concluding fanfare. We're going to talk about this movie in great depth next year when they finally re-release it in theaters, in the version we all should have been able to watch for the last 30 years. And it'll be great to have that back in our lives. And this movie
we'll get that 4K finally. Here's hoping.
Oh my God. It won't just be my despecialized edition or the 4K 77 stream that I've saved. All the wonky matte lines, all the static puppets in the background, all of those, I'll embrace them all. I'll love them. I mean, just an incredible combination of John Ford Westerns, Akira Kurosawa samurai movies, World War II dogfighting movies, and like a little dash of Nazi propaganda films by Riefenstahl that adds a little flavor to both the good guys and the bad guys. Weird, but gosh, and then just a dollop of myth put on it. And for all of Lucas's overthinking things and over-explaining things, the process of collaboration through which he took his ideas, he piled all this stuff in, stuff got shaved and molded and formed until finally it came out the way that it did. Incredible. And it's a masterpiece. And I will watch this movie over and over again for the rest of my days. And if there's a good afterlife, hopefully afterwards as well.
No, it's a bad one. Rise of Skywalker for you.
No! Well, maybe I earned it.
So, seems my role in this episode is bringing up these rubric making questions.
Great.
This one obviously brings up the question of how much does it started at all, right? You could actually say that for each of the trilogies, right? I actually struggled with this when I was trying to place Phantom Menace, because I'm it really started the prequel trilogy in such a spectacular fashion. You could say the same thing about, we probably did 2 hours ago, say the same thing about Force Awakens. So how much does it got it off to a strong start or like started something, how much does that actually factor into how high it goes up on the list? And I think if you are prioritizing that, you could make the argument for it being at number one. However, I kind of tried to de-emphasize that a little bit. I mean, I think the New Hope over the other first in their trilogy movies does hold a special place because it was the first one ever, right? So does that actually like give it a different boost? I'm really just trying to argue with myself and try to be like, well, why aren't we putting it at number one? But ultimately, I think the part of the if we're using trilogy narrative structure and logic and stuff like that, the first movie also has the disadvantage of being incomplete, right? It is usually not the climax of the overall narrative of the, nor is it the conclusion. And so it kind of has this weird holding pattern place of like, well, things are just beginning. We don't yet know how it's going to turn out. In fact, that explains a lot of my discussion of The Force Awakens earlier, or like me rationalizing placing it a little bit lower because of that, because it like kind of like exacerbates that problem or makes lays bare that problem of the first movie and what the burden of the first movie is. And so I do think that number two is the right spot for it. But obviously it is an all-timer, like PT saying, like changed everything, is probably the gold star model of what original filmmaking can do, right? Like you could argue that after 1977, everyone who's making a blockbuster film is chasing A New Hope, right? And trying to do that again, capture that magic again. Have we actually seen that? That's probably a question for another episode. But I think it would be tough.
Probably worth noting that we have 5 standard positions for quotes from the thing we're talking about in our structure for the episodes. And across all of us, three of us chose quotes from the first movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So I put this at number one. I was going to be like, I didn't have it here, but I think you all know where it was going. So I would, and I'm fine. I'll be okay. I think either of these, the order of either of these two is absolutely fine with me. So I'm not even making the case. But the case I would make, were I to make the case, is simply which one Star Wars movie do you put in the capsule shooting off from planet Earth to tell other species what we got up to on our brief time in this universe? It's got to be this one, right? That's a more dramatic way of PT's like, if I could only watch one movie for the rest. But I think this is the one that absolutely changed everything about the industry, absolutely changed everything about, the genre, and really just was purely groundbreaking. And I am a little bit of a stickler like PT. I think, you have to admire its charms in its rough form, right? I every once in a while can convince myself to throw on the THX video, which is the oldest copy I have. It is, so special because it is so slapdash in so many ways. And that it was, I mean, Mark Hamill always says it's, chewing gum and a piece of wire holding everything together. And that's the beauty of it. I think people on this show may not be as familiar with the fact, although it's come up, that Obi-Wan is my absolute favorite Star Wars character, and Old Ben is my favorite version of him, despite my love of Ewan. Like, I really do love Alec Guinness's gravitas. He does appear, obviously, in the other two, but I think this is, the place that character shines. And I think as I look at my whole fandom, I would say the thing I love most about Star Wars is when Star Wars is the tip of the iceberg and there's so much going on behind it and below it. And that is never more apparent than in the first hour or so of this movie, where Star Wars doesn't exist as capital S, capital W Star Wars. It is simply these characters, and yet you understand it all exists, right? Like it still works with everything that follows. So I do think as we look between this and the other one, this one does it's not as into its characters. I think the praise of the next installment is much more about the depth that goes with its characters. But I also think I think starting with the kind of basic superficial archetypes is fine. in terms of starting off this process, and I will always love this more. Funnily enough, I think you both probably know this. I didn't see A New Hope for a long time after I saw Empire and Jedi. I probably saw Empire and Jedi 3 or 4 times each before I finally found a video store that had a copy of A New Hope and watched it. My best friend growing up had copies of the other two taped off of HBO, and she showed it to me at a sleepover one time. I was like, what is this? Like, I think I could make my whole life about this. I never saw the first one until I got to show it to her, like 2 or 3 years later, or maybe not that long, but it felt like a long time. And Star Wars entered into my life right at the time my parents were getting divorced, and I was headed into middle school, and that's where somebody showed me, my friend Melissa showed me these videos, and like it's been the greatest comfort in my life and the most stable thing throughout the entirety of it from that moment on. And so I will always love both of these two movies, and I'm fine with whatever order we put them in. But I think the cool guy take now, the cinephile take, is actually putting A New Hope first right now because it's become the Zag, right? Yeah, and this is what I am.
That doesn't make it correct.
Well, but it also doesn't make it wrong. Like I think it's a very fair positioning. And again, I think if you're talking about the position in the importance of cinema, for sure. But we're making a ranking of my favorite Star Wars movies, and so I'm putting it second. A couple things. I know we talked forever, but whatever. We're making a run for the Wes Anderson filmography episode for our longest one. But first, to speak to like seeing it for the first time, I can't say I recall the exact moment I saw it for the first time, but I know the lore of seeing it for the first time. And that is descendant from this movie coming out in 1977, my parents still living in Beacon Hill before I was born, and being able to look out the window of what the apartment they lived in and be able to see down the street to see the corner that was like the corner of the block where the movie theater was. And my parents always saying like we would look out that window every day for like 3 weeks. And the first day we didn't see a line going around the corner, we went down to see whatever this movie was because the line was just there the whole time. And then they went and saw it. They were like, this is great. Like, this is really good. And then they had a kid and they were like, we should show this movie to this kid. And they taped it off of Channel 7, WHDH TV, when it was showed on TV, and they had a VCR and they taped it and they showed it to me, and Darth Vader walked into the room and I left the room because I was like, no, thank you. That guy is scary. I was like 2.5 or 3 years old. And I think if they had the chance, my parents, if they could go back, they would say, maybe we should have just left it there, because maybe he would not have watched the rest of these movies and maybe he would, have played sports or something. But whatever. Instead, they kept trying and I ended up watching it again. I will also note, to Greg's point about sort of the movie and how it exists and how it's like, it exists as a blank canvas and it's building it up. I have 2 lessons that I don't always do every semester, but I have 2 Star Wars based lessons that are in my rotation for things I can do for my students. And both of them have been built up over time, partially through mistakes I made when I was younger, around the idea of it's important that the lessons need to be as productive and as useful and as allowing for the contributions of people who have never wanted to watch these movies or never wanted to connect with them, as it is for people who maybe this is part of their core identity. And up to now, we always still have students, at least I always still have students who are like, I watched The Bad Batch. I'm into the Clone Wars. Like, I'm in on all this stuff. And then there's always students that are like, absolutely not. That's for nerds. Or I don't pay attention to American pop culture. This doesn't mean anything to me. And one of the lessons is about the opening crawl. And one of the lessons is about the first time we're in the Death Star boardroom. And, it ends with, I find your lack of faith disturbing. But just like the information and exposition that's in that scene and how much we can unpack and extrapolate. And it's used to sort of do a method of invention to help us start to see what is the information that we have and what are the implications of what it might mean if we are analyzing a text, but we're using a scene from a movie to do that. And this is a movie where you can do that, like, because like now we know what does the Senate chamber look like. We have seen it in multiple movies. We've seen it in a TV show. But when I was a kid, the Imperial Senate will be of no greater concern anymore because the Emperor it's like, what does that mean? There was a Senate and now it's gone. Like, what does that mean? Like, we just didn't know. And all this stuff that happened on the outskirts, all of that is like, in our imagination, we get to sort of picture what it is. And, it's fun. And I do it sometimes because I'm this kind of person. I'll watch the movie and be like, try to forget everything I know about everything else and be like, what does this just feel like as its own movie? And it's great. And it works really well. And it's this great theater of the mind. And there is a reason that like half of the Star Wars edits that you see are based around Obi-Wan explaining the Force and Anakin and the rise of the Empire to Luke in the hut, because like that's such a great little moment of exposition delivered greatly by Alec Guinness, who thought it was all terrible. Greg is not moving for me.
He was in the middle of his
Jen
magnum
is sort
opus.
of cutting in and out of movement. Maybe I'm losing.
He started with the childhood story. Like, what? So anticlimactic.
That means, assuming you both win because you doubled up, I only flip-flopped 2 pairs. And otherwise, I got my list.
That's great.
So I think I won. Not that
I
it
think
was
my big failure was Clone Wars, but I knew that was a losing battle.
I was proud of us for getting it as high as it was, because I was sure that it would end up at number 11, because I assumed Solo would be higher on both of your lists. So
no, that's
there's a little bit of micro generation going on in this activity, right? You and I are a little more aligned.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, no, anyway. I think that's a fair assessment, because I think we have matched up more than PT has matched up with either of us. So we're talking about like it's the micro generation problem.
Yeah,
not problem, difference.
No, but
problem.
Just
yeah,
trend.
Not a problem.
So, all right, whatever I was going to say didn't matter. You can cut me off when I start talking about my lessons. It's fine.
Oh, but that was good.
It was very good. So I appreciate the love fest that we have just given A New Hope, but I accept it as number 2 and readily admit that when we revisit this in about a year after we've seen the re-release, you will both apologize to me and put it back up at number 1.
That won't be happening.
Jen?
I can't speak for PT, but I don't anticipate that happening.
Jen,
so
what would you like to offer for number 1?
So, is it actually my turn? Oh yeah, it is.
I mean,
yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know who's listening to this deep into this episode and doesn't already know the answer to this, because it's the only movie left, but it is the greatest movie potentially of all time, The Empire Strikes Back. And to me, this is just a perfect movie. It has arguably one of the biggest, until we started mucking it up with all these other movies, it had arguably the biggest and best twist of all his cinematic history. Like the storytelling and how dark it is, but still being so hopeful despite all the things that happen in this movie, despite the downturn, to me is just like the trademark proprietary blend of Star Wars in terms of storytelling, right? And that things can get, and it is often why I look to Star Wars in times of need in my in my own life, or like thinking about how the state of the world. Like, Star Wars is such a balm because it is willing to show us how dark the galaxy is, and yet there's always that strand of hope. And I feel like we feel that the most in The Empire Strikes Back. Now, are there a lot of other cool things that I could talk about there in this movie? Sure. My cats are named Wampa and Tauntaun because the Hoth scene is incredible and unforgettable. But also we go to Dagobah and Yoda has all this crazy stuff that he's talking about and doing. And it really, like, one of my favorite things about Star Wars is the kind of mythology and mysticism. And I think the scenes between Luke and Yoda on Dagobah are arguably the best of that, right? And I don't know, I probably shouldn't go on because that will not leave anything for you two to say, but that I could go on easily.
Here's what I will say. I agree with you. I agree with you completely. And I was just saying, Star Wars, aka A New Hope, being at number 1, I can see it. But for me, it's always Empire. And I think the way to think about it is this, is if we like the idea of thinking about Star Wars existing on its own, we also have to think about the reality of like how easy it would be for a sequel to Star Wars to be bad. Like how following up that movie like relatively quickly. I mean, I know George was like, I got all these ideas and it's going to be great. But it was just like, this is the time, this is an era where you knock out a sequel and it's pretty bad. And then you do another one and it's even worse. And then there's like one or two more things and then maybe, and then it's over. It just feels so simple to have gone back, just revisited the first movie, do another run of it. You know, and some would say that's what they have done in later movies. Obviously, The Force Awakens, even the second Death Star, Return of the Jedi. People are like, "Well, wait a minute, like how original are we getting here?" But this movie is so different, but yet works so well, being of a piece with that first one. You know, as much as you know, I was praising earlier, although kind of obtusely across multiple hours, the connections between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and how The Last Jedi picked up the pieces from The Force Awakens and moved forward. Obviously, a different scene between Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, just because Lucas was sort of driving that train a little more tightly. But like it is really different. It does have this different tone. It does give us, as Greg already said, more depth to these characters. It has like the works the relationships between our main characters a little bit more. It also lets Darth Vader like off the leash. Like, you know, they say Tarkin's always holding Vader's leash. Well, Tarkin's dead. And Vader's off on his own mission, and it's to find the son of Skywalker, and he's out of his mind. He's losing it. And he's incredible. Everything we think about Darth Vader as this like ominous evil villain is from The Empire Strikes Back. He's just choking guys left and right. He's very focused. He's really, really fired up. The different worlds that we see, you know, I mean, we didn't really, we got Yavin a little bit. We had the base. It was kind of just like cement ruins. Like, that's cool. But we mostly had desert, and then we had space station. And that was kind of it. And then spaceship in the movies. But you know, the first movie, I mean, but then we had, we got Snow Planet, we've got Bespin, we got Dagobah. There's just all kinds of stuff happening. Plus you got bounty hunters, plus you got Lando, plus you've got I still think the best lightsaber duel. It's not like necessarily the most like flashily choreographed, but it has so much meaning. The one in Return of the Jedi like also has, you know, maybe as much meaning or close to it. But I just think like, especially because, you know, once you watch it for the first time, you know what it's all building up to. But like Luke, like trained but not trained enough up against Vader, it's so good and it looks so great. Irving Kershner, I have watched a few other movies he did. None of them are good. I don't know how he pulled this off. It's crazy. But somehow he made this excellent movie. And you know, Lucas with Lawrence Kasdan, with to a degree, Lee Brackett, like working on the story. It's so good. And they did such a great job with it. And it's, you know, certainly in the conversation, if not leading the conversation for the best sequel of any movie ever. And I think when we're looking at a list of Star Wars movies, Star Wars as a universe, as a fictional galaxy that isn't just one good movie and a bunch of other, you know, whatever ones, like say Jaws, or, you know, maybe like the Alien movies, or at least, you know, Aliens. Like, the reason it exists as this bigger, larger thing that we would buy books of, that we'd have role-playing games, we'd collect cards for, we would get action figures of random, like, made up people who weren't even in the movie. They're all made up. But I mean, not even in the movie made up. The reason it exists that way is because of Empire, and because Empire is so successful.
Empire's fantastic. You know, things that haven't been mentioned yet. The asteroid field chase is stunning. And again, a big step up from the effects of A New Hope. You know, I think PT said exactly what I was planning to say, which is that, you know, they did something really different, and that is to be commended, because it would have been really easy to make a paint by number sequel. And this is not that, and it's bold, and it's really invested in its characters. You know, I think the last time I rewatched this, which I think was about a year ago or so, I did start to think a little bit about, like, you know, when we're reassessing gender and power dynamics, maybe the Han Solo scenes aren't quite so charming on the Millennium Falcon. I think so. Some of those are a little, she said to stop touching her, but I'll just tell her how she wants to. And I don't know. In 2025 or 6, those feel a little less charming, but it is still Harrison Ford. And clearly Princess Leia did eventually fall for him, but maybe he should have checked those boundaries first. But this is a great movie. I think Yoda is absolutely iconic. Just I don't know what year I was driving through this afternoon, but my son and I saw a group of kids playing hacky sack on a street corner in Melrose, Massachusetts today. And my son said, "It's just like Yoda." I was like, "What?" He's like, Yoda gets hit in the head with a hacky sack. And he, of course, was referencing the bad lip reading Seagulls Go Away of Empire Strikes Back. And so he and I got home and we had to put that on. And it's so good. And it just, I think Yoda is, again, one of the things that should not have worked. Frank Oz is a genius. Mark Hamill deserves a lot of credit. He sold every single one of those scenes. And the aforementioned Irving Kershner that put it all together in a way and cut it that made it look sense. So I really love Empire. I think the moment where the X-Wing gets lifted out of the swamp is absolutely a top Star Wars moment. I agree with PT's thoughts on the duel. I do think there's a slow chunk in the middle, which A New Hope doesn't really slow down for me. It kind of maintains a steady pace, whereas Empire starts with a bang, and like Return of the Jedi, it kind of goes a bit slow in the middle. But there's a reason this is usually listed as the top movie in this trilogy or this saga. So absolutely. And if you haven't listened to the score to this one, the score also steps it up a notch. So yes.
I mean, the Imperial March. That's in
and
many
the
ways
Asteroid
that's
Field
enough.
is also good. But yes.
Yep.
So which part do you think is slow?
I do not really care for when the Falcon lands in the cave and then it doesn't really pick back up until Luke gets on Cloud City. There's a long time.
So you don't like Yoda?
Or Lando?
I like Yoda a lot, but those are not flash a minute thrill scenes, right? I'm also thinking of, I think it's the Family Guy adaptation when they do the cave scene. They say well, you got to go in there. It kind of kills the momentum on this movie, but it's important, right? They say something literally like that. It slows way down in the middle. But Jen, it's okay. This is still a great movie. But
it's those scenes when we get the closest to a holistic philosophy of all of Star Wars. Greg, what are you doing?
You ever fallen asleep during Empire Strikes Back? I bet you have.
No.
Oh, boo! You're lying.
I mean,
I'm just talking about it.
Exhibit A, I've freely admitted to falling asleep during movies in the past. I have not fallen asleep during this movie.
I will contend I've probably fallen asleep during every Star Wars movie, only because I've watched them so many times. There has to be inevitably a time that something was on and I went to bed. But yeah, I've never been
those first few scenes in Cloud City, right, where 3PO gets shot and they're just walking around the hall and where's 3PO? I don't know where 3PO is. Me neither. Let's watch this cloud car out the window for 10 minutes because it's the special edition.
This deal is getting worse.
This is your problem. This is your problem. You need the claustrophobia of those white walls from the original version. Every change made in the special edition is back.
Do not let me diminish its glow. It is a worthy number one. This is a fantastic list, and I'm glad we both agreed so much, but also spent so much time talking about what we love and what challenges us about these movies. I think we're very realist Star Wars fans, and that's what I appreciate about you two.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you all feel. I feel like Jen might feel differently with her. The Clone Wars might have been a big up or downswing on our collective list, but everything is generally in the same area where I had it on my own list. And the shift for the biggest shift for me is, I may be valuing Solo too much because I just rewatched it and because it's kind of fun, but it deserves to be where it is. I don't think it's a problem. I think we've got a good collective list. Should I share it?
Yeah, run it down.
Yeah. All right. Our rankings, the Long Take Review official rankings. as of May 2026 of the theatrically released Star Wars movies are number 12.
Because there will be a 13th one very soon. That's exciting. Sorry, go ahead.
Another 3 hours coming to figure out where we're going to place it. That's separate from our review episode. That's just the placement episode.
Re-ranking, yeah.
Number 12, The Rise of Skywalker, episode 9. Number 11, Solo, A Star Wars Story. Number 10,
Why are you reading them in backwards order again?
I'm going from 12 to 1. I'm counting up.
Okay.
You don't think that's right? You want to go from the top to bottom?
Obviously not. Well, why wouldn't you do it in order? Because we just spent almost 3 hours going backwards. Why don't we read them in the correct order?
Because I wanted to end with the thing we love the most. Because I thought that would be more fun. But okay, well, no, if you're just fair, we'll go the other way. All right. Our rankings are number 1, The Empire Strikes Back. Number 2, Star Wars, aka A New Hope. Number 3, The Last Jedi. Number 4, Return of the Jedi. Number 5, Revenge of the Sith. Number 6, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Number 7, The Force Awakens. Number 8, The Phantom Menace. Number 9, Attack of the Clones. Number 10, The Clone Wars. Number 11, Solo, A Star Wars Story. And number 12, The Rise of Skywalker. I think that's a great list.
Well, so what's funny is that we joked a lot, both on and off mic, about how contentious this was going to be. But what we mean by contentious really is like a micro contention, right? Of like, because I think compared to all other Star Wars fans, the 3 of us are relatively aligned in terms of how we feel about these movies. So I think that is reflected in this list.
We'll hear from those that disagree. Can't wait. Yeah. Please do. Right? Yeah, like, I love hearing people argue for the things they love. So yeah, tell us which movie you love we didn't get high enough. I was playing the game of where would Andor go, and it's high. It's very high.
It's very high. Yes, it is very high.
Good K2 reference. I mean, yeah, it's definitely in the top 5. And the only, I have to think about, do I want to hold on to my original trilogy bias and say, I gotta have a Return of the Jedi over that. Because it might be in the top 3. It might even be above Last Jedi.
Let go. I have a weird question for us to end on.
Okay.
As we look forward towards our next episode, which inevitably will be about The Mandalorian and Grogu. Wait, which movie on this list will The Mandalorian and Grogu resemble the most?
I have a terrible answer for you, because I don't mean this to be insulting, but it's Solo, A Star Wars Story. Only because I think it will still be an episodic feeling of like a couple of, a pair of characters off on an adventure, meeting other people, gathering things along the way. It won't have that prequel element, which is the thing that really, I think, trips all of us up, but especially got it down to only being at number 11 on our collective list. But I think in terms of the structure of the movie, the vibes of the movie, it's ultimately still a side story. Like, so many of these movies are the saga. It's the Skywalker saga. It's going to be a side story, even if it's the next step and hopefully a bigger step in the Mandalorian universe, the Mandoverse. It's still going to kind of just be like, it's a couple of guys like on the edge of the galaxy doing their thing, which is cool. And I'm excited to see. So I'm hoping it ranks much higher, but I think it looks the most like Solo.
That sounds right to me. I can't really argue with any of the logic there. I think hope it's better than that. Hope it kind of feels more complete. But all the things I'm nervous about right now are that it feels like a little TV show and it feels small scale, and it won't be doing the character type of things that some of the top of the list is doing. Now, I'm first to sign up for Please Let Me Be Wrong. They have shown us very little of this film, all things considered. So I'm encouraged that there must be a thing or two they're holding back, and hopefully that thing or two is not a bad movie. But I'm there. Star Wars is always excited on the big screen. I try to hide my nerddom a little bit at work, and so when people are like, "Are you going?" I'm like, yeah, I will probably check it out. Do you mean do I have 3 tickets in the first 24 hours? I do have 3 tickets in the first 24 hours.
Do I have 5 Burger King cups?
Out where I come from.
My answer probably would be, and this is again on theme, probably naively optimistic, but I would say that the vibe that they're going for is the closest to Return of the Jedi minus the Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader scenes.
Yeah.
Minus the parts that Greg loves.
Well, I meant minus the more serious parts, because I think to manage your expectations for this movie, I think you have to remove the like core mythology aspect of the Skywalker saga. It's not going to be doing anything on that front, but it is going to try to be a fun sort of Saturday morning adventure kind of, like, you know what I mean? Like the pulpy, that's what they've been going for with all the marketing, right? It's going to be a fun, I don't want to say adventure of the week because that implies that it's like a TV show reinforcing the skepticism that both of you have. But I do think that it is going to go for that kind of like just pure adventure, fun spectacle. We dip into the underworld. There's lots of huts. I think
Yeah,
at least that would be my hope.
I think that's fair. You know, I mean, I might go in a weird direction and go off book, go off this list. I think maybe the best case scenario of this movie, it feels like an Indiana Jones movie. Like it's that kind of episodic adventure where we feel like, yeah, like we're off doing it. It's Indian short round, like doing something, but in a Star Wars milieu. I think that could be cool. I would be shocked if it could break into the top half of this list. But like, wouldn't that be great if it did? That would be fun. And I would still have a really good time as long as it wasn't in the bottom of it, as long as it's above the bottom. That's
I would also go. I would also go with Return of the Jedi because I anticipate the thing I will love about this movie are all the critters being goofy and running around, and that's what the internet's going to hate.
Sure.
Looking at you, all you Babu Fricks.
I'm excited.
There's a pack of them.
Babu Frick, one of my 3 things I think work in Rise of Skywalker, to go back to that. So I should have said that just so we could have some Anzellan love.
Jen, have you been to Walmart and seen the giant bin of Anzellans they're selling? They have
have not.
3 or 4 different faces, and just like it was a classic Walmart giant metal cage just full of these stuffed animals. So you can recruit an Anzellan army if you hit up
or go swimming
Walmart.
In them like Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah. Walmart definitely condones that. Please, listeners, go Scrooge McDuck swimming.
Well, I know we've already talked for way too long about all these, but just to note, I'm up to, I stopped in the middle of an episode of Mando season 3 on my rewatch just because it was late. Right when we started to do the part of the episode that's on Coruscant with the Doctor and Katie O'Brien. But it's 2 and like a third episodes before then. That's Mando and Bo-Katan and the Darksaber and the Mythosaur. And there's some great space fights. There's some cool, like, there's all this cool stuff, but it does have this imbued like Mandalorian mythology that is like, I don't mind, but is definitely weighing it down. So like, I'm like, my new adjustment is I'm like, that's like about the length of a movie, these 2 episodes plus. Like if it's this level of quality in terms of the effects and everything, but it doesn't have like so much Darksaber lore kind of thrown in. Instead, it's another thing in adventures. Like that'd be good. Like I'd be happy with that. To Greg's point, I do hope it is. There's a reason it's elevated to being in a theater. It is not just, we didn't really have a full season's worth of stuff, so like let's just make it a movie, and like these are names, like this will bring people out, like it'll be fine, and it's just basically in the theaters instead of on Disney Plus. That will make them more money. If that's what happens and it's a kind of a neutered season 4, I will enjoy it. I will have a good time. I will be a little disappointed that this is what they came up with for the return after the last 7 years. But I also like Mandalorian and I like Grogu. And it will be fun to have them go on adventures again.
I'm excited to go with my daughter. She's all in. She's been doing perler beads of Grogu. We've been eating the blue Nilla wafers. We've been going to Burger King, way more than is healthy. The cups are awesome. The food is also at Burger King and available now. So I'm really excited to get to share it with my kid. And Sigourney Weaver in a Star Wars movie, that's pretty cool. That's nothing to sneeze at. So but before then, I would like to go to bed. So I am going to rush and say people can find me at Ion Cannon on Instagram and Letterboxd, wherever you find me. My first Mando and Grogu reviews will debut Thursday night on the 21st. So get that preview there. PT, where can people find you? You get one plug and then you just have to go to sleep.
My one plug is to follow me on Letterboxd at PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF. You should also follow the show there at LTR Pod. That's not a different plug. That's the same plug. And subscribe wherever you're listening right now to your podcast. That is a different plug. I broke your rules. You can't stop me. Jen, where can folks find you? And read your great reviews of Maul Shadow Lord.
You get, but I haven't finished them yet. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, and on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jen. And yes, if you go to thelongtake.substack.com, you will find what it will be soon to be all wait, now it's 5 because there were 10 episodes, right? Oh, gosh.
Yeah, yep.
It's too late to be doing math. All 5 reviews for all of Maul Shadow Lord, and then I'm hoping. We'll see how I do. I'm hoping to do a written review of Mando and Grogu also.
Oh, outstanding.
The All right. Will be with now, you. As we rehearsed, we practiced for hours for this. Together, let's sing Yub Nub.
What?
Yub Nub.
Dun, 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 dun. Wait, why aren't we just saying the May the Force be with? Why are we not saying May the Force be with?
Because I think you have to cut in Yub Nub. I was.
Oh,
I built the bit and I did the deep inhale so you could just hit stop right then.
Okay. All right.
And the bit kept going.
I'm doing that now.
I was going to say, it's so late and Greg is so tired, he could fall asleep in the middle of A New Hope.
Never.
Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free, and you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. You will also receive occasional written reviews of new Star Wars and Marvel.